Welcome to episode 61 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast, Winter and Blaze. I'm Blaze, your host, and this week it was an interesting game. The buy round games, I should say. Buy rounds have started. Um, we're now down to 7 games for this week. It'll be 8 games next week, and then back to 7 for the next 2 weeks after that. So there might be some shorter episodes coming in the next couple of weeks, which not never a bad thing. We definitely have some very interesting games to talk about. One of them definitely being the one played at Alice Springs. We will get to that. But before we do, how are you doing, Mr. Sarek?
I'm doing all right. Having a happy WA day, public holiday today. Uh, we don't celebrate the King's birthday. We choose to celebrate ourselves
That's
instead.
very
So,
understandable. Like we may be part of the Commonwealth and part of the Monarch, but we don't always really have to celebrate the royals.
yeah, I think Mum just liked the public holiday,
We
to
do.
be honest.
We love our public holidays.
Uh,
In saying that though, this is our last one until September. So
mhm,
what can we do?
yeah. So yeah, just had a bit of a chill day. A bit less on the podcast work. Uh, yeah, just got to have a relaxing Monday. Saw a bit of family on Sunday, but otherwise not up to too much. It's been threatening to storm in Perth, but in typical Perth fashion, we just got like a tiny bit of rain and not much else. So yeah, pretty chill.
Oh, that's very nice. Yeah, back to work. We get the King's birthday public holiday on Monday next week, so looking forward to that. But yeah, just another casual week for me. Nothing really changes. I did work on. Oh, welcome to Pride Month, by the way. Happy Pride Month
Yes, that started yesterday.
to all of my fellow LGBTQIA plus peoples. I think I got that correct. Myself, I'm bi.
Yes.
Just for the people that don't know. I worked on a production that celebrated Pride Month yesterday, Sunday, as we're recording this. It was a lot of fun. It was a little bit of Marvel Rivals stuff, but the whole opening ceremony thing. I did like some Minecraft stuff. Did like a podcast segment. It was pretty cool. If I can remember, I'll put the website down in the description. Related to like the whole thing that I worked on. It's a project that goes on for the entire month. So if you're interested, I'll check the link down below to go check that out. But we have some AFL to touch on, don't we?
We do. And shall we go on to the first game, which
We
was
shall
not in. Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I was like half introing it.
half intro, half not a segment.
I
But
didn't
that's
really give you a choice, did I?
no, you
It was
really
like,
did. You
oh, do you
really
want to go
wanted to
to it?
just
Yeah, we're in.
you really wanted to just jump straight into it. But yes, we're gonna
Yeah,
go
all right.
head up to the Gabba Thursday night game between the Brisbane Lions and the Bombers.
Yeah, and as we sort of mentioned, we last week, I should say. Yeah, we weren't really expecting that much from this game. We're expecting Essendon this year. They've shown a fair bit of fight, a couple of games that they've gone overwhelmed, but with the amount of injuries that they've gotten, uh, people thought that the first quarter of this game would reflect the easy win that was expected for Brisbane. Uh, as although Essendon were okay in the contest, they were suffering aerially to stop Brisbane marking the ball and moving at ease, which racked up the early points off turnovers. They finished the game with 11-7 Brisbane
Mm-hmm.
in total, which doubled Essendon's scoring shot per interception rate. So they were getting a lot from Essendon turnovers, as you would expect, fielding that young team out. However, Essendon's stoppage work gave them the spine that they needed to work with, and as the game went on, they worked out the right moves to generate some movements for themselves, especially moving Caddy up as a bit of a winger. He was very important, and it was a pretty brave move, considering he was the pretty much only mobile tall forward in the forward 50. They were running Peter Wright, who you wouldn't really call mobile, and oh, who was the injured one? Sam Durham, wasn't it?
Yes, it was
That was
Durham.
supposed to play full forward.
Yes.
Yeah, so so it was a pretty brave move to try and bring him in the game by pushing him up, but it did seem to work. Their defense was also pretty good for the entire night. They only really allowed Logan Morris to get on top of them in terms of tolls, and a lot of his shots were hard and from the boundary,
Mm-hmm.
which reduced his return from his pretty big 6 marks inside 50. That was Logan Morris. Um, But at the end of the day, it was just the lack of the territory that made the task a bit too hard for Essendon, as they might have drawn even in a lot of areas, especially after that first quarter, but couldn't really get a good forward press going just due to lack of availability to restrict Brisbane's whopping 136 marks. As I sort of alluded to, Brisbane won not comprehensively, but by enough. It was 13-12-90 to 11-6-72. And yeah, it was just like, it was almost as if it was as close as it was far away. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you
like
could see that the Bombers weren't quite getting enough out of it, but geez, did they make a pretty good shake at it.
they really did. There was some moments in that game where it looked like they had full control. Like they were
Yeah.
able to completely negate Brisbane's movement, especially in that midfield. Even though that teams haven't been tagging like the first person on my individuals list, which we'll talk about in a moment. Um, like
Mm.
who's been really really key to a lot of Brisbane's midfield movement. But the fact that it looked like the game kind of flipped entirely on its head when Essendon did have control is very scary to
Mm.
what they can actually do when they have all of their players.
Yeah, and as I said, it was really just that lack of restriction on the outside. Because as you mentioned, their midfield pretty much comfortably dealt with. The only one that really got off the chain was, you mentioned, who you're going to talk about first. But apart from that, everyone was just reasonably, you know, there. It wasn't the typical way Brisbane like to set up their attack, but on the flip side, Brisbane have been sort of turnover fishing for a lot of the year, and that's where it probably just got to be a bit too hard for Essendon.
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree.
Um, yeah. So, so when you are down, and I'm talking about down in terms of like player personnel, and I think this is like the bit of the shift from the first quarter mentality to the second quarter mentality.
Mm-hmm.
You could see Essendon shift a bit more from trying to not get blown out to like really try and alter their play, start opening up some aggressive options. Because in the first quarter, there were dumb kicks. It was fairly safe, and it wasn't like terrible, but it was allowing Brisbane to get a few more turnovers in their forward half.
Yeah.
And it was actually probably more dangerous playing that way because that's just playing into Brisbane's hands. Obviously, it's sort of hard when you haven't quite got the system just from the lack of personnel.
Mm-hmm.
But credit to Brad Scott, got him in at quarter time. And as I said, they just varied up the play, opened up the inside of the ground, as we mentioned. And there was still like a lot of high score off turnovers, but at least opened the scoring avenues, for their outside midfield, as I said, by shifting Caddy open. Their other outside midfielders didn't really get into the game, but it was still opening them up for occasionally.
Yeah.
And especially that forward line. That really they actually allowed their forwards to start getting them into the game once they, rolled the dice enough to just get a few more inside 50s. Honestly, as I mentioned, that their defensive soundness in the midfield prevented scores from stoppage. And, as I mentioned before, all the Lions midfielders, they were either like not too involved or in scoring or had very quiet matches. Even though, the Dons were good at keeping the Brisbane's clearances less damage, I am going to lead to your first player. And systematically, the pain of Hugh McCluggage. He
Mm-hmm.
just simply comes in whenever the Lions midfield is lacking anything. And in this game, they were lacking a bit of everything. So what does Hugh McCluggage come and do? He does
Everything.
everything. He wins the clearances, takes outside marks, and got involved in these scorage involvements. Honestly, I don't think they win this game without Hugh McCluggage.
Agreed.
I think Essendon actually win. But, that's a bit of just on paper difference. And that's why, even though Essendon were very valiant, it was sort of hard to see them actually win, even though they were so close.
Yeah, like despite, the fact that it's an 18-point differential, 3 goals, that was all done only in the last quarter. Essendon were pretty
Yeah.
much they pretty much had a really solid sniff at it, like by the start of the fourth term, and it wasn't just for
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for just a couple of defensive slip ups by them going in, like as that fourth quarter went on, they could have 100%
Mm.
just taken this win from the Lions. Same way that Melbourne did
Yeah,
2 weeks ago.
and it was good too because it's not a game where you know they had a bit of fight and swing. It's not a game where you got a young team coming in and they just get blown out. Maybe not score a goal in the last quarter, have a chance to win.
Mm.
I'm not referencing anything by the way when I say that, but it just
Sure.
occurred to me that yeah. But you know what I mean? Like it was 2 goals to 3 goals to. Like there wasn't much in that last quarter. And it was only very late where Brisbane sort of got that goal that put it out of reach. A very opportunistic goal by Noah Answorth on the 50-meter line. So, you know what I mean? Like, it just felt that, yeah, just a few things went Brisbane's way. Like Kyle Oman as well. I don't know if you mentioned him in the notes,
I don't.
but he was very injured and proppy in the first quarter, but it just really happened that wherever he was positioned, he seemed to get a few goals out of. Uh, he wasn't off the leash, but he just made the most of his moments. And it's just a couple of individual efforts like that really separated it.
Yeah, he's
Otherwise,
been
as I said,
Loman's been really in and out of the side with injury over the past couple of weeks. So the fact that like this, he's still able to make it work despite knowing that he's clearly dealing with something. Like
yeah,
that's just pure effort right there. That's pure like fire to win, the hunger to get a victory for the
yeah.
team.
I guess that's just like also systematic of where Brisbane's at. Like as much as they are just doing enough to win, I feel like they know enough about what they need to do.
Yeah, I think at the moment they're kind of
Um,
just pushing themselves to the bye and then probably going to reassess a couple of things
yeah,
there.
as I said, it just it's really weird because you feel like when they come up against a good team, they're like, well, they're not just going to be able to come up from scores off turnover. They're going to get pumped, and then they, still are pretty competitive against most of the good teams anyway. So it's like you give them a pass, but it is very tentative.
Yeah, 100%. And like on the Essendon front, like the fact that they still kept themselves in it despite lack of personnel, despite maybe like a bit of defense work not really gelling at times, bit of forward work not really gelling at times. Like the effort that they put against the Lions is something to be proud of, and I hope that
Yeah,
Brisbane
exactly.
fans, I hope the Bombers fans can see that despite where your injuries are currently at, and that your list isn't isn't ideal for in some cases,
Mm.
you're in the right direction.
Yeah, and it's going to be important to keep that percentage up as well because, it is the one thing about Essendon is that the few games that have let go, they have gotten absolutely pumped. So to show a bit more spine, it prevents because their percentage could have gone down to sub 80
Mm.
this week and it didn't. So maybe not sub 80. I don't know how math works, but either way,
I think every
it's just
goal is like a point one plus minus. I can't. I think that's how that works. I don't know how the behinds
it
work.
gets a bit different. Yeah, the equation gets different. Depends how much your opponent score, but yeah. Um, but yeah, as I said, just improve that percentage. Wherever you finish up this year is wherever, but that's probably where you want to see a bit of improvement.
Yeah, 100%. All right, jumping over to our individuals, as we have alluded to, and as he was mentioned, Hugh McCluggage was absolutely unbelievable. He finished with 41 disposals, 30 of them effective, equating to 73.2% efficiency, 17 contested possessions, 6 intercept possessions, 11 marks, 13 inside 50s, 7 clearances, a behind, could have been a goal, would have been the icing on the cake. 2 goal assists though, 12 score involvements, 25 pressure acts, 15 ground ball gets, and 557 meters gained. Honestly, if he doesn't get All Australian this year, it's a sham because he deserves it.
Yeah, like this. To be fair, I think people are because I think there's a lot of fringier players like Ed Richards,
Yeah,
not fringe, but you know what I mean. Normally outshadowed, they've just gotten their opportunity just to form an injury. So yeah, as I said, Ed Richards, Human Cluggage, there's probably someone else I'm thinking of, but hell, even Matt Rao might be
I
up
think
there.
Matt Rao this season
Uh,
is a definite contender for All Australian.
yeah. So yeah, we'll see. but early days.
Yeah, for sure. Like we're just barely hitting halfway through the season. We got time.
Yeah.
Jasper Fletcher as my second player. He was very composed around the ground. He kicked a goal from 21 touches, all of them effective, so 100% efficiency. 5 contested possessions, 12 marks, 3 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, 385 meters gained. And then co-captain Harris Andrews was immense to the back line, especially during that third and fourth quarter. He collected 16 disposals, all of them effective as well, equating to 100% efficiency. 6 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 9 marks, 3 score involvements, 6 1% 5 spoils. For the Bombers, Jai Caldwell pretty much ran rampant in the midfield. He kicked a goal from 30 touches, 23 effective, equating to 76.7% efficiency. 15 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 10 clearances, 2 goal assists, 6 involvements, 8 tackles, 30 pressure acts, and 334 meters gained. And Jaden Laverde stood tall in defense, finishing with 15 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 86.7% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 7 marks, 9 1%, 8 spoils, and 100% time on ground. Shout out to Essendon debutant Zach Johnson as well, who finished with 11 touches, 9 of them effective, equating to 81.8% efficiency, 5 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, and 2 score involvements. And as you mentioned earlier, just a brief touch on the injury. Sam Durham did do an ankle injury. He'll probably be out at least for a couple of weeks, including the bye, of course. So he'll hopefully should be back pretty quickly, but I don't know like if it's a huge extent a huge stint, I should say, on the sidelines.
Yeah, you just got to check the injury list. But, as I said, unfortunately, it's just someone every week for Essendon. So hopefully it's not too long.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, but the fact that they're still putting in like a lot of huge amounts of effort and surprising the reigning premiers is
Yeah,
still crazy.
exactly.
All right,
For sure.
let's jump over to our Friday night game at the MCG. It's Collingwood
Yeah.
and Hawthorn.
Interesting for very different reasons. Last week and through the year, we sort of mentioned how hard it is to tackle Collingwood. And this game is just where they sort of embarrassed Hawthorn, made them look effortless, and led them to the seventh worst tackle differential in history. Fourth worst by the team who won the possession count. I have foolishly not actually said what that differential is, but I'm pretty sure it was like negative 40 something. It was ridiculous.
Fair enough.
Yes, 38, 82 take 38. That's
Oh, you're gonna make me
46.
do math on the spot.
No, 44. 44.
All right.
Negative 44.
Okay.
Yep, you
I
believe
trust
me?
you.
Negative 44 tackle differential. We've seen the best of Collingwood before is their ability to apply ruthless pressure and force intercepts while also controlling the ball by a mix of slow play and fast handball chains in the neutral, frustrating opponents who can't decide whether to pressure the ball carrier or stay on the man downfield and prevent the easy mark.
Mm-hmm.
They don't dominate territory. In fact, Hawthorn actually had one more inside 50 in a very low total inside 50 count, which was 44 to 45.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not very low, just low. But yeah, as I said, it was a 4.5 turnovers that just allow Collingwood to convert by getting much closer shots to goal. Much closer shots on goal.
Yes.
18 set shots and marks inside 50, and there was not much the Hawks could do in defense as they gave up a lot of forward 50 marks, especially on lead from quick break, and they just didn't have the structure for a team that normally doesn't allow too much marks in their own D50. It was just the turnovers really killing them. Like their defense, again, it wasn't settled. I won't call them bad, but you know what I mean? It's just always the case with Hawthorn where it's like, on paper, again, a lot of people saying they should be one of the best defenses in the league, but it's definitely exploitable.
100%.
That's,
And I think a lot of that is also
word.
due to their midfield just not really being the same as it was last year.
No, absolutely. As I mentioned, that was sort of where I was talking about the turnovers more, or in this case, I guess it was more just like a lack of composure to pressure.
Yeah.
Which, as I said, like the ability for Dacos to just dish off, the ability for, I don't think Chris was in the midfield, but he had a lot of handballs. Sorry, no, I'm reading the stats wrong. Ned Long, that makes more sense.
Yes.
He was actually quite good for a young fella. Young? He's about 23, I think. Anyway, so you know what I mean? It was just like, even though, like, you could say, oh, Hawthorn's a younger team, Collingwood has more experience, like, it was just because everyone was putting pressure, it allowed the younger kids to play pretty well. Where on the flip side, that extreme amount of pressure, Hawthorn loved playing an uncontested game. That did expose more of their own errors. And I sort of, made my second point. It's just like, it is very crazy how confident Collingwood are in their ability to win the ball off pressure and turnovers. Because again, if you look at the possession stats, like Hawthorn got roughly the same amount of ball supply as they normally would get. They sort of got similar amount of marks that you would expect them to have some sort of form of control.
Yeah.
They won the clearances, got hands on ball more often than not. Hands on ball first, I should say. But that's the thing, you can get the ball, but if all you're doing is shifting pressure, then, it's all you can do. And I say Collingwood aren't the cleanest team going around, but if you saw where a lot of Hawthorn's turnovers were coming from, you said it before, it was a lot from the midfield and also half back, I should say. That was a bit of an area for them. Whereas Collingwood's was mainly in their forward half. They go fairly aggressively trying to find targets. They get a bit creative. They haven't got on paper the most conventional forward line ever. So, it may mean that they're similar, but, it's a lot harder to convert off a turnover that's deep in your forward 50.
Yeah.
Converting from like a half, a half midfield turnover, your defense is set. And, as I said, it just makes all your attacking all that more lethal. And in terms of forward half defense, Hawthorn has the worst of it for a top 8 team, so they concede the most points from their own forward half chains, or in their case, defensive pressure.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's a terrible way to explain it. In their defense, they turn the ball over and concede forward half chains.
Yes.
The worst of a current top 8 team. Part of it is their lack of presence at ground level. So if opponents can put forward half pressure on, Collingwood have 13 tackles inside 50, which is about their average. They really should get rewarded. That is what I mean when Hawthorn's defense is a bit exploitable. Relatively good ball users, great interceptors, but if you can prevent that outside chain from starting by putting a lot of pressures on not getting that free mark, you can just get the ball back and expose them. They defend the first entry quite well. Second entry, that's where you get them.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think part of that comes down to Sicily, honestly. Because he looks like he's been really out of form over the past month. Either whether he's carrying an injury or he's just been out of it. I don't know. But whenever he's not performing, it feels like the backline doesn't perform. Or the midfield doesn't perform. Well, the midfield's kind of been out of sorts all season long, to be honest. Like, the forward line has been very unconventional because they've been relying a lot on Gunston, which has been a crazy surprise. But you'd expect the defense to hold up. But if their captain and, like, kind of their leader down back isn't up to standard, that feels like they're not in the position that they should be.
Yeah, and it's another thing too. It's like you sort of forget how often they rely on Sicily for good ball use in that half back line, because when you look at the others, and there's another team I'm going to talk about at this, like, their distributors, Carl Amon, Jared Impey, who are both, what did I say?
Jared.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me. Both are fantastic, but as I said, Carl Amon got a bit of attention. Like, he had kicks, but they weren't very penetrating. So it's just one of the ones where if you can reduce his role, as I said, I'm sorry. Impey is more of the breakout player.
Mhm.
He's a bit more run and carry. And, if you can keep Amon under wraps, like, there's really not that many good distributors. Hardwick's a bit iffy with his disposal. Scrimshaw, he's sort of fallen a bit in the mix this year. Like, you were talking about him, you probably would have had him in the mix for All Australian last year, and now he's just a bit eh. Um, yeah,
D'Ambrosio
who else?
or
Yeah.
Scrimshaw?
Scrimshaw. And
Um,
Ambrosio is fine.
I probably would have put in D'Ambrosio up higher, probably because I think he's probably the best pickup that they had from last season. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, like it feels like just everyone's kind of just dropped off in terms of performance, or they've
Yeah,
just,
which
or
is
they've
weird.
just been, or they've just been found out. Is the other way to look at it.
Yeah. I don't even know if it's find out. I think it's just roles. You know what I mean? It's like, because Battle has actually, I mean, he had a bit of a nightmare game this game, but, he's been distributing a bit more. So
Mm.
it's like, and it's again, is what I was talking about last year or early this year, I should say, about how Hawthorn was sort of covering a bit too many of the same bases in their defense. Because as I said, they've got tolls that can kick out. They've got Weddle, Battle, hell, even Barras isn't the worst kick ever. They haven't relied on it, but he can kick it. Then Scrimshaw, and then you got the halfbackers, and that's almost too many distributors. It meant that they're always flicking around players to try and get the most out of it. We've seen Hardwick go forward, Hardwick go back, Sicily go forward, Sicily go back, and it's not bad, but it just changes up the. It's not consistent week in, week out, set movement like
Yeah,
you would expect something from Collingwood, who have been very consistent with movement.
that's
It's like,
that's what I feel like the big differences with Hawthorn and kind of just a lot of other teams, just in general right now, is the
mm,
fact that I feel like the one part of a team that should always kind of be a core with very little position swaps is the defense, because that feels like it's
yeah,
like one of the higher points in the team that needs to be able to gel with no issues,
yeah.
because
Like
the
the
whole
back
goal is to
three,
stop other teams from
yeah,
scoring against you, right? So it makes the most sense to not break up a
yeah.
core. But
It's like the back
whereas
three, there's
I
like
don't know.
always movement for one player. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, but I actually think, yeah, it's the one above that. Your two distributors and a lockdown defender. Like, that needs to be fairly consistent. Um, because, well, I say lockdown, like lockdown small. Like, you can either have like a tagging sort of halfbacker, or you know, um, or like a what do you call it? Or a bit of a half and halfer.
mm.
I mean, sort of like Dan Houston is anyway. Like, obviously, this year has been less distribution, but his defense is still solid.
Yeah, that's true.
Always has been. Uh, or Quainer. Quainer would actually be a better example of what I'm talking about there. Someone who can lock up, but then get a tiny bit involved in distribution if needed to. Um, whereas, yeah, as I said, it feels a bit either or for Hawthorn. It's either distribution or defense,
Yeah,
and it
they're
hasn't
they're
quite
both
sunk up yet.
they're both really lacking in those positions right now, and
Yeah.
it's either you got to depend on someone in the midfield to step up, or you've got to
Mm,
figure out what's going on with your defense. Because again, as we've said on paper, and as
yeah.
we've kind of said going into this season, Hawthorn have on paper the best defense in the competition, but we're not seeing that right now, and we haven't seen it. What
Yeah.
feels like all season long.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but they have the potential. Like,
Yeah.
I'll concede that. So, but yeah,
Before
and again, but this
before
is a
I
team that has, I should say,
no go on.
because we've been fairly negative, when the pressure is being applied. We know when Hawthorn get their game on, they're
Yes,
going to be good. And like, they'll
absolutely.
have a game probably in the next couple of weeks where we'll forget all about this sort of side of Hawthorn. It's just, again, those small things you need to tinker with that you have to get set before finals.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you just get exposed on the big stage.
Absolutely. Before I jump over to the individuals, your thoughts on the Nick Dacos contested mark?
Oh, it was a thing of beauty. I cried for almost the whole weekend after it happened. The only thing I am disappointed in is the fact that I have not had children yet to share this moment with. Only one generation got to experience such a pivotal moment,
That's a real tragedy.
equaling Matt Rao in contested marks,
This is true.
which, yeah,
And yet Sam Lawler
he
has
took the
more in less
longest.
games.
Yeah, he took the longest and he decided, you know what? Now that I've done it, I don't need to do it again. Stuck on one.
Well, to be fair, I'd like to just to take the fun out of this, just remember that's not his role. Like that's as simple as that.
Oh,
That's why you have players. That's why Collingwood have players like McCreary, like Chris,
yeah.
like Schultz. Like they've got a bunch of these other players that take these contested marks and
Hmm.
hold the space that allows the Dacos boys and other players to be the ball
Yeah.
movers and the transitioners. Like that's not
And Nick
Nick's
Dacos,
role.
yeah. Like his role is outside of that pack. If he's in the pack, that's probably a fault on his positioning.
Yes.
Um, Whereas
Or
this
it's a
one, it
fault
was
on
just
someone
a
else's
sort of
positioning
light
and he's
one-on-one
covering.
contest. You know, it was just like the one time where you're going to kick it to Nick Dacos. He's got the advantage, but he also technically has someone on him.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but it's like Max Gorn with bouncing. You know what I mean? You almost never want to see him do it, just because of the novelty of his never done it.
Yeah,
But
that
when he
that
does, I'm sure we'll also cry.
I feel like he does it because he knows he's gonna fumble the ball if he does. I think that's
As they say from Ruckman, long way from hand to ground when you're
it.
that tall.
That's why they're the tallest positions.
Yeah.
All right, jumping over to our individuals, and I start with Jamie Elliott, who lit up the MCG Friday night. He kicked 5-1 from 12 disposals, 10 of them effective, equating to 83.3% efficiency, 6 contested possessions, 5 marks with 3 of them inside 50, 2 inside 50s, 10 score involvements, 4 ground ball gets, with 3 of them also inside 50. Ned Long, up against his old side, fun fact, was absolutely immense. He finished with 24 touches, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 5 inside 50s, 3 clearances, 2 goal assists, 10 score involvements, 11 tackles, and 25 pressure acts. And then Darcy Cameron matched up really well against Floyd Meek this week, getting 32 hitouts, 5 of them to advantage, and 16 disposals, 12 of them effective, equating to 75% efficiency, 11 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 4 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 6 score involvements, 6 tackles, and 15 pressure acts. Jumping over to Hawthorn, recruit Tom Barras did what he could in defense, collecting 9 touches, 8 of them to advantage, equating to 88.9% efficiency, 4 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 4 marks, with 3 of them being intercept marks, and 3 score involvements, 8 one percenters, and 7 spoils. And then Jack Ginnivan played a lot more midfield time this week to great effect. He kicked 3 goals from 31 disposals, 7 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 6 score involvements, and 4 18 meters gained. Just an interesting note on
Yeah.
Darcy Cameron. He's was initially kind of linked to go back home to WA, but he's gone back into talks with Collingwood for another extension on his contract, which I think is really interesting because,
Mm.
like, not Freo, West Coast could really use him genuinely.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was just laughing because you said Freo. I was like, yeah, I know
I mean, to
Sean
be fair,
Darcy's struggling, but I wouldn't quite go that
no,
far.
Freo I think are finding a decent balance with their 2 key rucks at the moment. It was a
Yeah,
lot
it's
better
not.
this week.
We'll talk about it. Yeah. And we'll talk about it the next game. But yeah, as I said, it would just be funny if they
Just grab a third
just wait for another big man. Yeah. But yeah, no, I agree. Like West Coast, they would really love a player like Darcy Cameron, but I don't think it will really suit like the end of his sort of career.
Yeah.
I say end, he's like 28, isn't he?
And
He's not that
he's
old.
still fairly young in terms of a rock roll.
Oh no, he's 30.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. I mean, it's kind of middle
It's
age
still
for a
not bad.
rock. Because
As long as
especially
you
when
don't
you
pick up
look
an
at,
injury.
well, I mean, you currently look at Goldstein, who's like
Goldstein at
38.
the last match.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they got me out of bed to play a few games. Was he
Well,
37?
maybe the Bombers should hire more rocks, and Goldie doesn't have to play.
Oh, yeah. It was like, remember when Essendon were just putting in, honestly, anyone? Like, it was Matthew Leuenberger, Sean McKernan, and Tom Bellchambers
Mm.
for ruck. I think McKernan was very old. Leuenberger was pretty injured. And then it was just like random Tom Bell Chambers. Yeah. Like as I said, sometimes sometimes you just gotta make do with what you got. And I think Eagles are just gonna do that until they either draft another one or yeah. I think they'll wait until they're actually good to draft a ruckman.
Yeah, I think so. Just touching on the
Oh,
injury
sorry, not
front.
draft.
Uh,
Recruit.
yeah, I know what you meant. Touching on the injury front, Pat Lipinski suffered a concussion from a collision. That thankfully,
Mm.
it's I can't remember which player who did it, but they did get off from the MRO, so there's no MRO report on that one.
Yeah.
I believe. Oh, actually, was that the shoulder to shoulder? No, that was last week. Sorry, that was
Yeah.
Alex Pierce last
I
week.
can't really remember. Of all the ones that are a bit weird, I thought that one was, fine. Getting off by memory.
Uh,
Lloyd Meek, that's right.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was really just because of some of the other hits that have gotten free week that it was a bit surprising, but
Mm.
I didn't really think there was that much in it.
No, yeah,
Although
that's
it was a bit sad because Lipinski was tearing it up before then. That was another one of the Hawks midfield that was Collingwood
probably
midfield that
midfield.
was on fire.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, half
Um,
forward midfield.
yeah, and then Lockie Schultz suffered a hamstring strain. I don't think it's too bad, because he's been a little in and out of the side anyway with injury. So hopefully
I
the
think that was
bye.
ice, to be honest.
Yeah, it'll probably be ice. He probably won't play next week. I don't think they've got a bye next week. I think it's the week after.
Mm.
So he'll probably just take an extra break and get that all sorted. Touching on the MRO front, though, Mabior Chol was fined $1,000 for an obscene gesture. Everyone knows what that is. I don't know
Mm.
what it was referring to, um, but everyone knows what obscene gesture means in this context.
Normally. I mean, you'd be surprised. It'd be
Yeah,
like
players can be creative.
did the old thumbing the nose at someone maybe? Maybe. Well, at an umpire. We've seen a lot of careless contact with the umpire. We haven't got a fine for thumbing your nose at the umpire.
Uh, or the
Actually,
old.
with dissent on the down low, could
Yeah,
be a
that's
good
true.
way to
They
express a
have
bit of
they have been a little
frustration.
lenient on dissent, which is probably a good thing
Yeah,
actually. Um.
somewhat. I feel
Anyway,
like sometimes they could give 50.
yeah, true. Anyway, let's jump up to our Saturday games. Going up to the Gold Coast, where the Suns host the Dockers.
Yeah, it was wet and hard fought. But when the sun went away, it was the Wolfies' time to play as they had the lead for most of this contest. It was looking like it was going to be a comprehensive win early with Dockers absolutely controlling the play. But their conversion sort of slipped off a bit. Hard to say about 11-9, but it was more just getting enough from their entries. But Gold Coast came back with some solid centre midfield work. We know that's where they like to win off, and their ground ball winning from the midfield was absolutely fantastic. It did set up their attack, but overall movement was very hard in this game. Scoring from movement was basically non-existent. There was almost no score from halfback. Fields of either team. The Tolls struggled at both ends, as I mentioned, from the conditions. Neither Tolls could set up their preferred style of play of intercept marking. We know Suns love to intercept mark to generate play, whereas Dockers like intercept marks for preventative defense. And offensively, they had to take their moments with the Tolls. However, that means that some of them got creatives. Voss got a whopping 6 tackles inside 50, double the next place player. Really good for the big man. 2 early goals as well. He was very important. And Jed Walters took a couple of opportunistic plays in a game that really could have had him, just doing nothing and being understandable. Had a few nice ground ball gets as well. But at the end of the day, it was a small forward battle, and the two main ones were Flanders and Bolton. They were exchanging goals in the last quarter. It was going back and forth once the Suns got back into it.
Mm-hmm.
Flanders had an absolute beauty of a soccer to put them one behind. You thought that Fremantle were going to lose it, but I think it was Carl Warner? No, the other one. Wagner, I think, got a intercept seal the game. Or maybe it was Amos, actually. I think it was Amos now I think about it. But yeah, he
Anyway,
just took an opportunity and they the Dockers just coasted to an 11-point win. It was 9-10-64 to 11-9-75.
Yeah, it was really interesting to watch because like despite how wet and miserable it was, like there was still some decent clean bits of play from both sides. It was highly defensible because with a lot of ground ball play, which plays very well into the Suns, surprisingly, even though they've have kind of dominated the air in defense for quite a while.
Yeah.
But it allows players like like your Riolis, to be able to go a lot harder at it because it's kind of the style that they've grown to play in terms of that like ferocity and like
I don't think the ground
pressure.
ball in the defense was actually that much
Yeah.
today. I actually think it was more the link up between Rioli because they were having to use their hands
Oh yeah.
for a fair bit as well. A bit more than they would probably like to on their back half because obviously the long kick down the line, although they had good representation at down level, it just was like, I don't know, it was weird. I felt like Fremantle had better outside ground ball
Oh no,
work.
I completely agree. Um, and again, like just for like on the Freo side of things, they have tried to rely on their tools a little too much. So it's surprising that a player like Voss, who I do mention in my individuals, is able to kind of stand up out of nowhere and just pretty much take control of that forward line and secure a victory for Freo in a place that
Yeah.
they didn't really expect to win.
Yeah, exactly. And it was so weird because, again, Voss is being pretty maligned. He was very inaccurate for the first few rounds as well as last year. And then he got suspended for a few weeks. But you saw a bit of lack of structure during those 3 weeks. And, we've talked a lot about Amos. He did kick a goal that, again, helped seal it.
Mm-hmm.
But his presence wasn't there. Like Tracy wasn't taking as many marks, but he was at least bringing the ball to ground. Voss provided some very high and interesting leads. But yeah, as I said, it just doesn't seem to function as much this year, just as Tracy Amos. And then when you look at like someone like Jackson, who you can have in the forward line, introduce the mix, but Jackson looks better in the ruck. And, we saw it this week, as I said, Sean Darcy still took a lot of hit outs, but he was very much rested when he wasn't in the ruck. He only had 50% playing time.
Yeah, that's right.
And I do also mention it in the notes too. We were talking about that ground ball in the midfield, and I think that was like one of the things that was a bit almost sliding doors because I reckon Freo were going to sub off Darcy. Then Carl Warner. I can't remember which name's his first name, but
It is Warner,
Warner
correct.
anyway. He does his hamstring, I think it was,
Yes.
and he has to get subbed off instead. But thankfully, Five Time, he was very prepared because he was very good at either on ground level or putting pressure on ground level. Honestly, though, I think people forget how good he is as a wet weather player. Like in Freo's heyday, he was an absolute monster in the wet. He just has the conditions for it. But you know what I mean? I feel like that was just like a little bit that swung Freo's way, Fife having a bit of an impact, even if it was very late. Um, and as I said, it was just one of those things where Freo again just got a tiny bit more out of their players, whereas the Suns sort of they didn't really coast off a few, but again, I just think in terms of pure conversion, probably a few players were just, I wouldn't call it underperforming, but didn't have that conversion. Ben Long, obviously being a big one, scored
Yeah.
one goal three, didn't quite mark for it because he was marking it inside 50 quite well.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Ainsworth had a few opportunities, but didn't quite convert. Um, Not so much on the scoreboard, but distribution. So yeah, as I said, yeah, it was just like a bit of polish. Where Fremantle's their players that weren't getting into it, like Murphy Reed, still had moments where he impacted. Bailey Banfield, same with him. So yeah, they just had a solid mixed bag of players.
Yeah, it's true. It's crazy how a different style of footy, purely by weather conditions, can elevate different players who normally don't have the spotlight on them.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, granted, Fife is kind of used to the spotlight, but he's a different story considering, his age and being
Yeah, well,
injury prone as he's gotten older.
I think a lot of Fife is he's a very movement based player, but it's not like a Pendlebury subtle movements. Like Fife is a very much big body movements
Mm-hmm.
for a small frame player. And that's harder to do as you get older. Whereas in the wet, I think that sort of advantages you because there's less effort that you have to do to make those sort of movements. And sometimes you don't have to be the cleanest too, which is obviously another area where Fast struggles. So,
Yeah.
we might see him next week. Who knows?
Well, yeah,
Probably going to be a sub for a long time.
as long as he's pulled up okay, I'd definitely be down to see him
Yeah.
play a lot more with this
And
season
Freo
potentially
do
being his
have a
last.
string. Yeah. And Freo do have a string of 3 games at home as well. So if Jager O'Meara doesn't come back, he's still sitting on the pine. I think he might have returned to Waffle this week. Yeah. We might see Faf run for a few weeks.
That'd be nice. But yeah, let's jump over to my individuals, starting with Shea Bolton, who stepped up once again. It's good to see him actually have a good string of performances. He finished, he kicked 3-2, I should say, from 20 touches, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 3 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles, with 3 of them inside 50, and 16 pressure acts. Sam Switkowski, Switter as he's commonly known as, was solid with pressure. He kicked a goal from 17 touches, 16 of them effective, equating to 94.1% efficiency. 8 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 2 goal assists, 10 score involvements, 7 tackles, and 22 pressure acts. Luke Ryan was very reliable in defense. He finished with 18 disposals, 13 effective, equating to 72.2% efficiency. 8 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 71 percenters, 6 score involvements, and 461 meters gained. Over to the Suns, Matt Rowell was once again his tackling best. He's either going to be high on clearances or high on tackles. This game he was actually kind of doing both. He collected 27 touches, 15 contested possessions, 8 clearances, 13 tackles, 33 pressure acts, 10 ground ball gets, and 448 meters gained. And then Sam Flanders pushed up and kicked truly, slotting 3-1 from 16 disposals, 13 of them effective, according to 81.3% efficiency, 7 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 5 score involvements, and 8 pressure acts. I just realized I didn't actually put Voss in my list. I thought I did. Anyway, shout out to Suns debutant and the player that they primarily picked up in the draft, Leo Lombard. He collected 8 touches, 3 contested possessions, 3 clearances, a goal, and 14 pressure acts.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to also mention Sam Flanders as well because it's sort of been a weird year for him because he started very slowly, but no one really cared because, the Suns are doing so well.
Yeah.
But I think he's actually started to find a bit more role. It's not like Nick Martin levels of adjusting to like that forward distribution role, but he is getting a lot more involved in actual play, which is good because, he's definitely he's too. I don't like using the phrase too good to play like that quieter role, but it sort of is the case when you got Sam Flanders. He can be, a very good link up player, but as I said, Gold Coast, again, I think this was a good move. Difference from last year to this year. A lot of their midfield possessions were sort of circular, not that impactful. They remove one of the pill getters, try and put him into a different role. And all of a sudden, their midfield looks more threatening. Areas around the ground look more threatening. And, and now Sam Flanders, if he can actually start kicking goals or at least scoring in them, they're going to make him a lot more threatening. And this is already from a team that's scoring fairly well.
Yeah,
I did
exactly.
get my whatever I make, the bullcrap that I say in the predictions, of Suns getting under 75 points.
That's right, you did.
I feel like I cheated on this song because it ended up being a wet weather game, and I don't think it would have happened if it was dry.
Yeah, I think if it was a dry game, like it could have been a completely different story.
They might have only scored 40 points.
Yeah, possibly. On the injury front, as we had already mentioned, Carl Warner for Freo went out with hamstring awareness, which is why Sean Darcy was not subbed out. But he was predominantly, as we mentioned, rested, had only 50% game time. But I think, to be fair, that is also because he is coming back from injury. Like they want to get game time still into him because rucks are hard to keep match fit,
Oh,
at least in
yeah,
terms
yeah,
of
yeah.
long term. Which kind of makes sense. But again, when you have Luke Jackson out there, that's perfectly okay to do that. Especially because you can
Yeah.
use Luke Jackson in multiple positions.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the biggest boon for him was he was keeping up the pressure on the ground level midfielders.
Mm.
So even though they were getting on top, there were times where Jackson would like interrupt a few easy handball chains or at least get like a hand on the opponent where Darcy just also lets players run through him. So I think Jackson was just the better matchup for that particular day
Yeah,
in the ruck anyway.
yeah, I agree. Over on the MRO front, Jai Amos was fined $2,000 for striking Sam Collins. It was low impact. I think it was like a body hit, so it's not too bad.
Mm.
And just jumping over to the Rising Star because that was announced.
Ooh.
And we go back to the day prior to the Collingwood Hawthorn clash because Ed Allen is the Rising Star nominee for round 12. In the
Oh,
game
I didn't
that
know he was
he,
still eligible.
yeah, just barely actually, which is really interesting. He finished the game against Hawthorn with 23 disposals, five intercepts, and 3 clearances. In games prior, he had 24 disposals and 8 tackles in round 11 against North Melbourne. So I think that string of consistency is what kind of
Mm.
caught the eyes um, of Rising Star selectors.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, in the buy round, they normally use that chance to do the whole body of work sort of, um, nominations. So, you know, especially before you start seeing some more debutants after the mid-season draft, which we will talk about
Yes, we
in a
will.
bit.
We did actually forget to do it because we were going to do it at the start, and I completely forgot it happened. But we will touch on that
Yeah, I
when we
did
wrap
too.
up this
Yeah.
round. But before then, we now go down from the Gold Coast to Sydney over to NG Stadium, where the Giants take on the Tigers.
Yeah, and look, what is football but a collection of storylines? And with everything emotional seeming to happen this week, we mentioned before, of course, the Nick Dacos contested mark. Who would have thought there would be a moment more heartbreaking, more tear moving than seeing him getting his first connected mark? And that was, of course, the early injury to Callum Ward. Took the crowd out of it early, as did a 6-2 opening term in favour of Richmond, who looked to catch the Giants on the hop. Uh, on paper, it looked like bad kicking was sort of keeping GWS in the contest, though, as the game progressed. But really, it was more forward half process or options, as a lot of territory just ended up to boundary side stoppages. Uh, because the Tigers were making a conscious effort to try and take away some of the intercept presence of Taylor and Buckley,
Mm-hmm.
which meant players like Jauncey Fall and Sims were sort of taking a few wider marking lanes, which ironically actually put Lecalier, who I think was following Sims, into the game. So, you had on one end Richmond just trying to squeeze as much offense, trying not to let GWS operate from the back half. But where it really got broken, I actually think although Richmond were inaccurate, I don't think they were nowhere near the worst performers of the round.
Yeah,
And
that's for sure.
I don't think it was as bad as 10-17 looks. On the flip side, the set shot boys making music happen from set shots. But it would not be Hogan
Hogan.
to be featured in this chorus. Yeah, I think I was almost going to go Hawkins, but it was Brown, Riccardi, and in the end, Cadman that would absolutely sink Richmond by nailing set shot after set shot to see GWS convert at the pace needed for their 28-point last quarter comeback win, inspired by the warding protection of a three-quarters time speech by the injured Callum Ward,
Mm-hmm.
and would see Richmond only score a point in the last quarter to get the win. It was 12-8, 80 GWS to 10-17, 77 Richmond. Yeah, although it was only a point, there were some moments where I thought that Richmond could have held up, but there were just a tiny bit of plays. And, I can't remember what it was, but it was also some of the, unfortunately, it went down to some of the, what do you call it? The inexperience, because there was a
Yes.
couple of times where, I think it was, because I don't want to be too harsh on him. It was one of the rookies. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Sonsi, actually. Um, had a chance to pick up the ball from ground. Goes for a soccer for territory. Absolutely whiffs an air ball. GWS collect, take it down the other end for I'm pretty sure which was a goal. And then that's fine. That happens when you're youngster. But the killer, and this is where, you get the differences between like 10 game players and even 100 game. The same moment presents himself, and Swansea went from the soccer on the boot, kicked it forward directly to a GWS player, got the possession going the other way. And I don't think that was like a moment where they got a goal on the other end, but it was an opportunity to just pick the ball up, take some time, at least force a stoppage where Richmond were doing so well.
Yeah.
But obviously, when you're younger, you're really just thinking win, 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 win. You're not thinking of the minor bits of how you win, which is where it was a bit of a shame. Again, you're not focusing on those moments, but I think that was just more of a reflection where Richmond's at
Especially in a high
the
pressure
moment.
fourth quarter. Like it's like, and
Exactly.
you're tired after a long game. Like these young boys don't
You're
have the
tired.
tank. They're
And
no,
it's so demoralizing when Western Sydney were scoring so well because
yeah.
they were going at an absolute pace in their forward
And
line.
like
They were
this isn't the
very
only
clinical.
game that we saw where a team had like a fourth quarter fade out because of the lack of experience, because
Mm.
of just being a much younger team. And we'll talk about
Yeah,
that. We'll get
exactly.
to that. But yeah, for this one,
Mm.
it hurts because this is a game that we probably should have won. That we probably
Oh,
could have
yeah, no doubt.
kicked off. On the set on the list of things we need to accomplish, which we've already done. To be fair, we've already proved our doubters wrong by
Yeah,
winning games already. But like
exactly.
just having another 4 points there would have been really nice. I am
Yeah,
impressed
and
with a lot of our players though. Like, and I do
mm,
talk about this um in my individuals. But the fact that having Prestia back makes so much of a difference in our midfield because it frees up Taranto and Hopper to do what they do
mm.
best. It's day and night how important he actually is when he's fit.
Yeah, exactly. And I sort of make that into my last half an hour. And this is like emphasizing the points where Richmond did well. And it was from a lot to do with center stoppage work turning into a forward half game. And as I mentioned, like the more that Richmond got their forward half game going, made it harder for the Giants to set up their back half game.
Yeah,
Again, in the last quarter, that sort of fell apart. They couldn't convert the press more easily. Giants were winning a few more clearances, and they were especially getting a bit more movement. Again, a few more turnovers per handball chains. Oh, not specifically handball, but you know what I mean.
yeah,
Um, and as I said, it was just, it was a bit hard because they were working hard. They were producing a lot of shots from stoppages, which isn't the easiest to do, even against like a team like the Giants, which are just for being a stoppage based team.
yeah. It's true.
Um, but yeah, but until the Giants fixed it, it was just it just looked like they had enough time of possession to win this game. They had a bit of control. Um, they could actually control the tempo of the game as well. And their defense did allow sparse set shots. As I said, the other thing though was because GWS have more competent forwards, is that they weren't as afraid to reach that central target.
Mm-hmm.
Because, as I said, for Richmond, it's much more of a gamble going into that middle section. Because not only do you not have the best contested marks in there, like, you've got a flood of people, a lot of people flooding for preventing Lynch.
Mm-hmm.
And then, the others are just a bit here and there. Um, but as I said, you do introduce, your Buckleys and your Taylors into the game. So it's like, while I did think it was the right option going wide, it really did kill them then for GWS to sort of win this game by making the most of the higher target set shots. You know, yeah, but as I said, they got bailed out by freakishly good conversion. It was, a really shocking day for the GWS's midfield. And, as I said, if it wasn't for the fact that they were converting good, it would have been a monumental shock loss had Richmond got over the line. But not to be, unfortunately, just not to be.
No, sadly not. But credit where it's due. GWS played a great game. Despite a great second half, more like. But they
Mm,
have solid pieces. They always have. It's just they've been going through a bit of a phase, to put it simply.
yeah.
Whereas for us, we played a solid 3 quarters. Can't fault them for that. It's just always those little minor mistakes, the lack of a tank and the lack of experience as well going into that fourth quarter. That's just something that the boys will learn as the seasons go on, as the experience gets better. I
Yeah,
can't say
exactly.
that we played badly. Inaccuracies happen.
Oh,
17 behinds, a couple of them rushed.
yeah.
It's just part of the game. But in terms of just overall function, where I'm really happy with where we're at right now.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's jump over to our individuals, and I start with Jake Riccardi. He was very lively around the ground.
Wow.
I know, it was shock. He kicked 2 goals from
Yeah.
17 disposals, 13 of them effective, equating to 76.5% efficiency. 8 marks, 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, and 5 tackles. Tom Green was hard at it on ball. He kicked 1-1 from 30 touches, 14 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 7 score involvements, 7 tackles, 17 pressure acts, 10 ground ball gets, and 567 meters gained. And then, as you have mentioned, Sam Taylor was so important in the backline, as he always is. He finished with 13 disposals, 12 of them effective, equating to 92.3% efficiency, 7 intercepts, 8 marks, 3 score involvements, 6 pressure acts, 11 1%ers, and 11 spoils. Over to Richmond, and Ben Miller did an excellent job on shutting down Jesse Hogan. He was on Hogan for pretty much the entire day. He collected 11 touches, 5 intercepts, 6 marks, 9 1%ers, and 9 spoils. And then Dion Prestia, as I mentioned earlier, back from injury, showed why he's still so important to our midfield. He kicked 1-1 from 31 disposals, 23 effective, equating to 74.2% efficiency, 13 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 clearances, 9 score involvements, 5 tackles, 24 pressure acts, and 11 ground ball gets. I haven't checked our injury list yet. I don't know if it's been updated, but I'm praying he has not hurt himself from going that hard at it this week. I'm praying.
Yeah.
Um, Sadly, speaking of injuries, as we have talked about, I don't know if it's officially confirmed yet, but with Callum Ward's knee injury, it is a suspected ACL, which could officially end his career. They're hoping it isn't. If it isn't, he might get a proper farewell game at the end of the season. But if it is, yeah, it's not looking
Yeah,
good.
it would be hard to come
I
back from
believe he
that.
went in for
Yeah.
scans today at the Epworth because he came back down to Melbourne because his family's here. So hopefully it's not an ACL, and we pray for the best.
Yeah, because honestly, apart from maybe the odd salty, salty Bulldog fan? That was the trade, wasn't it? Callum Ward for someone else.
I'm pretty sure he came from the Dogs, yeah, but I don't think anyone,
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like 90% of Dogs fans aren't like upset with that
No.
because he's a great man, great footballer. Like
Yeah.
I think
And honestly,
one of the few people in the AFL that you can like really genuinely look up to as a role
yeah.
model.
And I know the whole thing about like Tom Scully, them paying a lot for his services. But I think Callum Ward was like the correct choice to throw a bag at.
Yeah, I think so.
Bulldogs slapped it at the time. But over his career, he's just shown what his worth was. Obviously sliding doors, it did mean he missed out on the premiership in the 2016 Bulldogs side, but overall, he's had a fantastic career. We just hope it's not over.
Yeah, hopefully. Over on the MRO front, we have arrived to our destination of Xavier O'Halloran being fined $1,000 and Kane McAuliffe being fined $1,875 for contact with an umpire.
I'm trying again, Blaze.
We
A lot of
were
teams
so
this weekend.
close. We were so close.
Mhm. Yeah, well.
It happens. Speaking of it happens,
Luckily,
cross
there was
town.
a team playing bruise-free football enough to guarantee themselves no careless contact with the umpire.
Very true. Because across town,
Hmm.
over at the SCG, the Swans hosted the Crows, and it was an absolute 90-point bloodbath.
Absolutely. Did I say the score for the GWS game? I think I did actually.
You did. You
Maybe I
did.
did.
That was, I think,
Yeah.
the game before
Okay.
you forgot, but that's fine. We can move on.
Whatever. Anyway. So, we're just going to start with it because it was very boring. It was 5-11-41 to 21-5-131. Sydney have ball movement issues. We mentioned last week how they are the highest turnover team, and Adelaide laughed as they got to move the ball with so much ease, knowing that they will break Sydney's defence enough time and unleash the vultures of Keys and Rochelle, who were feasting on goals coming from Sydney's mistakes. Adelaide got a massive 70 inside 50s, 14 shots within 30 metres, which allow for that stunning accuracy. Only actually kicked two behinds themselves. There were 3 rush behinds, and it was just salty easy, as Sydney had maybe 10 minutes of resistance in the third quarter, and they were pretty much witches' hats after that. Even when Sydney got it inside 50, the likes of Worrell, Keane, Miller kept on getting intercepts, and their defence only allowed 3 goals from 7 set shots and no shots within the 15-metre arc directly in front of goals, and only 5 marks inside 50, which, in something that seems counterintuitive, is all that they managed themselves. Adelaide only got 5 marks inside 50 in this game. It was not a big game for either Fogarty, Phil Thorpe, or I think Tex played this game. So, yeah, it's just very weird that wasn't. But there were a lot of, I think Adelaide were a lot better on the ground. So,
Yeah, they were.
that sort of made up for that. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm just going to not deep dive into Sydney, but I'm going to focus on them because, there's not really much to say about Adelaide. They had so little resistance against them that they sort of just played their game.
Yeah, they
That we've
had
already
full
seen at the
control.
best. Yeah, very good team from halfback. Their midfield was doing enough. And yeah, but I just want to highlight Sydney's back half. I think, because there's a lot of problems with Sydney. We've talked about their forward half, but they just weren't clean enough today, and they're not very clean enough. Sydney cough up 69, very nice number,
Very nice number.
intercept possessions per game to their opponent, which coughs up 52 points per game. So halfway to 100 points is what Sydney cough up. When you take that part away, I think that was third worst in the competition, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Eagles were the worst, and I think maybe Richmond.
Probably.
Anyway,
Probably in there.
yeah. When you take away that part of Sydney, which was defending transition well enough, what the hell? Sorry, I've just written this very weirdly, but last year, this year they are actually transitioning, transition to defending well enough.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a bit worse than last year. You can put a lot of that on Golden.
Yeah.
But it's really the ball in hand. So when it's actually in their defense, they're just not trusted to get it out of it. Riley Bice is really the only one you would normally trust ball in hand. Rampy, sort of, but he isn't really that damaging with it and doesn't really get it enough.
Mm-hmm.
He's very milquetoast with his disposal. But yeah, as I said, in this game, Riley Bice had an absolute shocker. And it was so bad that he got subbed out. And then it was just a vicious cycle. They didn't get exposed as much last year because they often won the battle.
Mm-hmm.
But they're now losing ground, which exposes their back half, who turns the ball over, which makes them lose more ground, possession, and points. And, it's Blakey. He's a bit down from last year. You sort of expect him to turn over the ball a bit, but it's still hurting.
Yeah.
Sam Wicks is another offender. And Matt Roberts. It's hard because it's such a young kid. Well, not such a young kid, but he had a really good first year. But I think it's just the way that their defense is sort of shaped, where last year it didn't matter as much, whereas this year it's sort of hurting him. He's gotten a few good disposal games, but yeah, it's still a lot of turnovers. And surprisingly, McCartan too. He has a lot of turnovers for someone who plays so deep. Um, and yeah, as I said, it just meant that Adelaide, again, who have a lot of opportunists in their team,
They do.
really exposed them in this game.
Yeah, it's it's
I,
uh it's crazy how flexible Adelaide have become, honestly. Like
yeah,
considering like over the past couple of years we've seen some of that flexibility, but we've also seen them get shut down very convincingly in a lot of areas. But it looks like
yeah,
they have really developed a lot of their midfield really well. Their backline has formed up incredibly well. Um
mm,
like Worrell, Keane, Butts has surprisingly become a really good core backline. Um,
yeah,
like their forward line, despite the three-pronged tall forwards not having as much of an impact this week, is still as damaging when they need to be.
mm,
And then yeah, you've got Keys and you've got Rochelle really taking control of that ground level. They're
yeah,
almost, I think they're almost at like the tip of the spear kind of point of where they want to be. I think there's maybe just like one or two very
yeah,
minuscule things that they need to tighten up on, which I'll probably touch over when they go into the bye. Um, but
mm.
otherwise, they could very much be, apart from let's say Geelong, they could very much be the most dangerous team in the competition.
I'm assuming offensively,
Yes,
probably not overall.
I think yeah they've still got
Which
a
I would
couple of
agree.
minor defensive issues, which is what they'll need to tighten up on. But I think offensively,
Yeah,
they 100% could be the most dangerous.
yeah. It just sums up if you put a bit more attention to their defense. Well, if you put a bit of attention in the midfield and you can force the ball on ground level in defense, that's where you can expose Adelaide a bit. But
Mm-hmm.
you're starting to really target specific areas to try and counterplay Adelaide. So it's very good signs. And yeah, they're definitely a top four threat. Um, I don't know if they'll end up in the top four, but they definitely deserve to be around the mark.
Yeah,
And
100%.
again, even in this game where we said there was a lot of Sydney turnovers, they still 7-1 from stoppage still, 14-4 from turnovers, and 3 goals from centre bounce. 12-4 forward half is where I was really talking about, where Sydney were letting themselves down. But again, still 6-1 from the back half as well.
Yeah,
Compared to
it's
the
very
woeful
well
1-2
well
for
rounded.
Sydney. Yeah, exactly. Like that is, like normally sometimes it's like one area and like turnovers was massive, but it was also just every part firing.
Mm.
Um, whereas for Sydney, like again, is another week where every line was fairly disappointing.
Yeah, it's definitely not looking good. I think they're gonna have to start their rebuild as earlier than they thought at this rate.
Maybe.
But let's jump over to our individuals, starting with Mark Keane. He had an incredible game in defense for the Crows. He finished with 23 disposals, 18 of them effective, equating to 78.3% efficiency, 15 intercept possessions, 10 marks, with 8 of them being intercept marks, 14 1%ers, 10 spoils, and 514 meters gained. Sam Berry was immense throughout the midfield. He kicked a goal from 16 touches, 10 contested possessions, 8 inside 50s, 8 clearances, 5 tackles, 13 pressure strikes, 9 ground ball gets, 389 meters gained. Ben Keys was solid up forward, kicking 3 goals, including an awesome goal assist to Josh Rochelle. It was basically a soccer
A
kick. Everyone's
soccer.
seen it by now, I
Mm,
believe. It was so good. Um, but he also finished with 17 disposals, 11 contested possessions, 4 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 6 tackles, with 5 of them being inside 50, 22 pressure acts, and 3 1%ers. For the Swans, Brody Grundy pretty much did all he could as he tries, as he pretty much normally does. He had a pretty much a normal Brody Grundy kind of game. He finished with
yeah.
35 hitouts, 8 to advantage, and 23 touches, 17 of them effective, equating to 73.9% efficiency, 20 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 6 marks, with 4 of them being intercept marks, 8 clearances, 3 score involvements, 5 tackles, 14 pressure strikes, and 10 ground ball gets. He's one of the few rucks that is really, really good below the knees, I've noticed.
Well, now it was pretty well. Look, he just had a really bad start of the year, but
True.
it's funny. Sydney have gone to hell in a handbasket, but Brody Grundy's actually sort of come back into form. It's a bit weird, but
It's a bit weird because the rest of
yeah,
his team isn't all that great, but
yeah,
and
yeah.
then yeah. And for my final player, Justin McInerney was very solid coming back from suspension. He collected 27 disposals, 20 of them effective, equating to 74.1% efficiency, 18 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 16 pressure strikes, 5 1%ers, 11 ground ball gets, and 3 spoils.
Yeah.
So, not
No
much
one's
more we really
suspended.
need to say on that game.
Yeah. No one suspended, no one injured. I
Nope.
guess that's one positive thing for
Well, as
Sydney.
you said, Bruce free football.
Yeah. I mean, was it? I didn't even know the tackle count, but I don't think it was. Yeah, it was actually 83 tackles to 84. So it was a lot of pressure. It was
It was
just,
a high pressure game, but there was just no injuries. At least none reported that I
yeah.
could see.
As I said, it was just like weirdly concerning, whereas like Sydney applied pressure, but they just weren't getting any functional gain from their pressure.
Yeah.
Whereas Adelaide were forcing the turnovers and all that. In fact, it's probably very concerning that they only managed 3-4 from turnovers while managing 83 tackles. It's actually a bit, yeah. But anyway, they only
Let
lost the tackle count by one.
yeah. Um. Anyway, let's jump over to our Sunday games now, and as our title
Mm,
suggests, we're back to the Red Centre, over to Alice Springs, TIO Traeger Park,
mm.
where Melbourne annually hosts the team, and this year it is St Kilda.
Well, you said we're at the Red Centre, but anything but the Red Centre was what Melbourne was aiming for. The Saints looked very lethargic last week and had a lot of players just not providing much for their effort.
Mm-hmm.
This week they made a few wins and seemed to be able to get the most out of the players. They started like a house on fire, and it was seemingly started from a very lax Cozzy Pickett snap from 30 metres out. He played on, it fell short of the goal line. They went back to back. Cal Wilkie started a launch uh, to an Isaac Keeler goal at the other end. This awoke Saints back transition. As I mentioned, Isaac Keeler, of all players, had an absolutely massive first half. And it seemed like it would be old St Kilda. In bits of the second quarter, though, and for the rest of the game, Melbourne had pure possession dominance. It
Mm-hmm.
resulted in 63% of the time being played in Melbourne's forward half. The problem, though, as we mentioned before, forward half scoring chains resulted in a putrid 4-14 output, 6-9 overall from set shots, 1-7 from general play, which resulted in 7-21-63 Melbourne to 14-7-91.
Before
And this was the team that cooked themselves out of it.
Yes, absolutely. And before you continue on, I just want to mention that only 5 of those behinds for Melbourne were rushed.
Mm.
16 of
Yeah,
them they kicked themselves. That's
exactly.
dreadful.
And while I did mention that they did push a lot of set shots high for the Saints, well, not that I mentioned, it's like other teams, they did force Melbourne into tougher shots.
Yes.
But some of those, like these ones that GWS was slotting and making the most of their opportunities, Melbourne just couldn't find any. And they were, in fact, the worst X score performance of the round. I think that they had 20 point, 20, oh wait, no, that's Adelaide, sorry. Adelaide actually scored 28 points more than they were expected to. That put salt in the wind. Yes, it was 20.8 score left on the board. Yeah, as I said, it was unfortunately just very dismal. And when Saints were actually moving the ball to an all right degree, it really put salt on the wounds to their inaccuracy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as I said, Saints actually had similar scoring shots generated from defensive transition, but they were able to result them. They actually resulted in easier shots and a lot more goals, as I mentioned. 10-7 to 2-6 from halfback comparatively. And as I mentioned, the inaccuracy actually allowed St Kilda to slow play a bit better. They weren't needing to clanger up the wings with dump kicks. And when they did, at least, they were forced into stoppages, and they were surprisingly on pace with the Melbourne midfield. He had a bit of a down week, with no one attending the centre bounce, really putting on the efforts in previous weeks that we've seen that have allowed for deeper, more threatening entries for Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And stoppage scoring was overall non-existent for the D's. I think for St Kilda too. Both teams are fairly young, as we mentioned, but when you have such an inaccurate forward line, being the worst in the competition for fewer accuracy as well as X score, playing such a pressure-free brand that Melbourne did, I think this game was where there was almost no tackles laid. Transition was just so easy. It was 52 tackles to 56.
Yeah.
Melbourne winning that count. It just made it harder to outscore your opponent on a decent day and Sisyphean on an abhorrent kicking day like it was for the D's. As I said, it's one thing to be so inaccurate, but it's the other thing to at least not put the pressure on to try and keep the ball in your forward half.
Yeah.
Effectively, I should say.
Yeah, that's right. And it's
because it's like
yeah, go
the
on.
ball did live there, but part of it was just because it was in St Kilda's hand. I think they won the possession count by nearly 100. Yeah, it was 390 to 299 disposals in
That's
favour of St Kilda.
crazy.
So it was very weird. So the ball lived in Melbourne's half, but for a good probably 20% of that time, it was actually in St Kilda's hand. Very quick mark. 140 marks to St Kilda. Yeah.
It
was just
feels weird because you'd think that like Melbourne's defense, especially with both Lever and Mayback, would have matched up fairly well and maybe even like overpowered kind of St Kilda, but St Kilda just managed to just kind of weave their way through that defense like it was nothing for a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, Melbourne got it out easily enough, which, because I said, like, as much as I bang on about Melbourne, like, St Kilda scored 2 goals from the forward half. Like, all their play came from the back half. But you know what I mean? It was slow plays turning into threatening plays. Whereas, as I said, Melbourne's were just not quite... Like, they moved the ball easily, but the Saints were like, as long as we get the last line of defense right, we'll be fine. And that was pretty much the case.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh, actually, it's a good timing. The MRO reports have just come in for Sunday's games,
nice.
so I'll touch on that in a moment. But before I do, I have some individuals to cover, and I will start on St Kilda side, of course, with former Richmond player Dan Butler, who has come back from a long-term injury. I believe this is his first game of the season, and he was immediately back to his best. Essentially, he kicked 4 goals from 12 disposals, 4 contested possessions, 3 marks, with 2 of them inside 50, 7 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. Marcus Windhager was pretty solid around the ground. He's been used as a tagger in a couple of games recently by Ross. I believe he was tagging Lachie Neale when they played against Brisbane. But so he was very solid around the ground this week. He finished with 28 touches, 23 of them effective, equating to 82.1% efficiency, 10 contested possessions, 8 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 4 tackles, and 492 meters gained. And then Cal Wilkie, who I think is genuinely going to be another All-Australian this year. He's rated number 1 defender in the competition right now, I believe. I read an article about it this morning, I think.
I can check that.
But he's
believable.
He's very, very dependable right now. He collected 31 disposals, 28 of them effective, equating to 90.3% efficiency, 9 contested possessions, 11 intercepts, 15 marks, with 4 of them being intercept marks, 8 1%ers, and 7 spoils. Got an answer for me?
Whoops. For key defenders, yeah.
Yes.
So it's Cal Wilkie, Sam Taylor, Sam De Koning, Sam Collins, and Darcy Moore.
That's a lot of Sams.
Good day to be a Sam in defense, yes.
Jumping over to the Demons, Christian Petrarca was immense around the ground for them. He did as much as he could. He kicked 2-1 from 22 touches, 11 contested possessions, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 9 score involvements, 10 grab ball gets, 448 meters gained. Then Trent Rivers, little underrated kind of game. He was very solid pressure. Finished with 14 disposals, 6 contested possessions, 5 marks, 6 tackles, 17 pressure acts. There isn't really too much more we could really say on this. It's just another...
Not really.
Another lack of hope that Melbourne have just forgotten how to be able to play at this ground. The last time they won was in 2022 in Alice Springs.
Yes.
because as everyone remembers, and as we touched on last week, they got absolutely decimated by Freo last year. I can't
Mm.
remember who they played the year before, but I think that was another big loss for them. But yeah, it's maybe they should stop selling games to Alice Springs and let another team go there because it's not looking good
Yeah,
for them.
maybe. That's a while, like, a few teams. It's hard because, as I said, sometimes the money's nice and all that. And Melbourne do have a good Indigenous relationship with the NT
They do. That
community.
is very true.
Um, so, it's one of those things where it's like, it can be a blessing or it can be a curse. It's always a good thing until it isn't, sort of thing.
Mm.
And right now, it's very much a sort of thing for Melbourne. Um, but yeah, I don't think you can really fully blame Alice Springs. As I said,
No, it's kind of just
it's
Melbourne
just
being Melbourne.
yeah, because it's so weird. Like again, they have enough. Like you can't even say, oh, they're playing a few kids. They're not like performing enough. Like yeah, as I said, Daniel Turner, pretty solid game. Judd McVie, very solid game. Xavier Lindsay doing some very good things. Harvey Langford doing some very good. Um, obviously you got a few like Aiden Johnson sort of struggled in this game.
Hmm.
Got subbed off at halftime. I'm not sure if it was concussion, injury or not, but yeah, I think he actually hit someone. Actually, I think he might be in MRO trouble. Um, but yeah, as I said, it's just like the others. Like Melksham, he struggled to get into it. Um, Clayton Oliver had a very, very down game again. Uh, and it's just enough of what should be top tier players just not providing, like we saw earlier in the year, where they just can get that cohesion, especially in their midfield.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh, yeah.
Touching on the injury front, Matthias Filippo was subbed out with a calf concern. Ross Lyon has said that it is on the minor end and is hoping he will be back post bye.
Mm,
So fingers crossed for that because he has had some very solid games recently.
yeah.
And on the MRO front, Cosy Pickett was fined $3,125 for striking Marcus Windhager. And then, as you had just mentioned, speaking of, Aiden Johnson has been um, ruled out for 2 matches for rough conduct against Nosea Wanganeen Millera.
Yeah, that's not too surprising there. Yeah, just on Matthias. It was one of those ones where it was so early and you're like, it's either they've subbed him off because he's actually done something, or they're just not going to risk it. You know what I mean? Like he was still moving. Um, so I feel like this is just Ross going, you know what? We'll put some time on Jack Carroll. It's just not worth risking Filippo, which, he did make another early substitution earlier in the year, which was a bit controversial. This one, very understandable.
Yeah, absolutely. And plus, not a bad thing. This is Jack Harrell's first game as a Saint.
Yeah.
And I
And
believe he had
he's
a
a good
decent game
goalkeeper.
going off of the stats. I
No.
didn't note them down, but he had a decent
Yeah.
game. So
And a few
hopefully,
moments.
hopefully they can get some more utilization out of him, especially with McRae still being out.
Yeah.
So they could definitely use
Um,
use that little bit of more midfield to halfback sort of link up.
yeah. I'm not sure what he did. There was something he did that I quite liked, but I can't quite remember.
That's all right.
I think it was a goal assist, not so much a direct involvement. But
Might have
yeah.
been.
Um,
But yeah, we've got
yeah.
one more game to cover. And as I had talked about with the Giants Tigers game, there was another team involved that kind of had a fourth quarter fade out. Part of it due to
Mm,
experience, part of it due to tanks, stuff like that. And it's over in the
yeah.
West at Optus Stadium with the Eagles hosting Geelong.
Yeah, and as I said, it may feel like a bit of a letdown that Eagles let a very close game turn into a blowout. 43-point margin and another 100 plus score against. The end result being 11-7-73 to 17-14, 116. But really, they did everything they could to ensure that they got enough chances against the Cats. And it was
Absolutely.
very close. I think with about 10 minutes to go, I think it was still a goal in it. But some very late goals by Jeremy Cameron just tore this game apart. I actually want to check how quickly it was because it felt like bang, 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 bang. Yeah, so Jeremy Cameron got the first goal. Sorry. His third goal at the 25th minute, and the margin at that point was still 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I said, it blew out 5 minutes later to the 30 odd point margin that it was.
Yeah.
So, really not that much in this game, despite it. Yeah, it did at the start look like forward half turnovers were gonna be make this an early blowout lead, with a couple of shockers from uncontested possessions early. Geelong overall scored a healthy 70 points from them. Again, as I mentioned, the Eagles are actually the worst for conceding points off turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
But it was actually the continued improvement of the stoppages, which they won this week. They won the stoppages. Love to see it. More general play than centre, but um, it did help them get enough bang for their buck from their entries.
Mm-hmm.
Geelong on the other way could move the ball at ease against the Eagles. But the defensive matchups, again, only fell apart very late. So it actually took a long time to be punished off the back half. The Eagles were very adapted after the early period of Geelong domination. Using Brady Hoff, of all people, as a makeshift midfield tagger, it prevented Smith from getting 40 plus, as he went from a massive 25 disposals in the first half to just 38 to finish the game. Edwards got a bit more involved in ball movement while still keeping Shannon Neal accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Cole actually was very good with his ball use as well this week, as well as Edwards, who again was also distributing.
Yes.
However, it was sort of the difference between these teams. The big meters generation in Smith, Holmes for Geelong, and Duggan for the Eagles all went for territories and had a few turnovers. But it was Geelong's better ground presence that actually made them get a bit more from the down the line territory move. And it just got them a lot more inside 50s. I think it was Eagles again didn't really get that many inside 50s. It was 59 to 43.
Yep.
So it was really Eagles. They got a lot of conversion out of plays, but they didn't get much out of their scrappy plays where it was a bit late. But Geelong got enough from their scrappy plays, and then the class started, put a bit of separation between the two teams, especially by some of the ground level players of, Manor, Stengel, Myers.
Yeah.
They all had pretty good games. And, even though that Cameron got, 5 goals at the end, Gibney actually kept him to 1 goal and 7 possessions in the quarter. And for a team missing McGovern, I actually count it as a win. What he finishes on is what he finishes on. But, it was tough to keep them under wraps. But even though it did end up with the blowouts, even if the body stink fight match up for it, I think you could actually see the cohesion on a team still missing 2 of some of their better players. And are also, just very up and down anyway. It was good to see Oscar Allen convert a few more of his shots. It was probably one of a solid game, I'll say, by Harley Reid. He got a few clearances. Probably your boy, former boy's best game, Liam Baker. He was sort of shifting between, midfield and halfback.
Yeah.
Sort of not quite in the possession, but providing actual solid link up. To help the Eagles move the ball up the field a bit more, which I thought was very useful.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, as I said, Elijah Hewitt, again, continuing to build as a midfield player. A bit quiet early, but really went good in the last 3 quarters of the match.
Yeah, I think even without, McGovern, Elliot Yeo, and just a couple of these other players, Jack Waterman, that they're still missing. I think that they're definitely heading in a much more positive direction. This game against a really, really strong side definitely shows that. They were able to fight pretty much their way into a really really potential victory lead, pretty much up until the Geelong decided to, take it all the way back and just have complete control once again. And that comes down to their lack of experience. These younger players not having the tank to run our games just yet, and that's not to say that it's a forward issue. It's definitely more like the midfield and the back line in this regard. But like, because forwards can only do so much. Like, if you can't get the ball down there, what can they do? Um,
Mm,
but the fact that they're still playing that whilst they're not fully playing out four-quarter games in the way that they want to, they're still running the game
mm.
out at a decent level. They're still applying enough pressure on ball and onto their opponents to where they can cause an impact. It's just not getting further up the ground for them to capitalize on. But that'll be something that they can continue to develop with time and experience, and they're working towards that pretty well so far. Like, I think
Yeah.
Mini has
And
done a
it's
really, really good job with them so far this season.
Yeah, because we mentioned earlier, and this is why you got to give coaches a bit of leeway, especially first starting, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like you saw some of the tactical moves and it wasn't getting that much cohesion. And you just thought, where's this all leading to? But as long as you know when to back yourself in, when to revert things back to normal, we've now seen our West Coast play a fairly consistent brand over the last 3 weeks. And, as I said, even though, it's only one win out, you mentioned Adelaide, Geelong, two of the best scoring teams in the competition. And there was only really one quarter in both where the game really got out of hand. Obviously the last quarter for the Geelong game and the third quarter for the Adelaide game.
Mm.
So, you know, it's still fairly respectable.
Yeah, 100%. And I think picking up, we're going to touch on the mid-season draft in just a moment, but picking up Tom
Mm,
McCarthy out of Richmond's VFL side, a player that Mini
yeah.
and Graham and Baker are very familiar with. That'll be huge for their defensive efforts because he's a defensive player from memory. Um, but like, this existing cohesion between Mini and some of the players that he now has is really important because it helps with communication in terms of with everyone,
Yeah.
and like leadership and stuff like that. But I think they're 100% heading in the right direction. I think the fact that
Yeah.
Harley Reid seems to be a lot happier on field now, even though he's still a
Yeah.
little bit hot headed, that
He's
goes a
always a bit
long
of a
way. The
pest.
fact that they're able to play the brand
Mm,
of footy that they want to play for the most part definitely helps
yeah.
with growth of their younger players for one. The happiness, even despite the losses of their players, like showing that they are heading into a good direction, is always a positive thing.
Mm,
Um, Obviously, everyone wants the 4 points. Everyone wants, the statistics to show that they're improving. But you can
yeah,
just see it in their
exactly.
on-field play that they are getting better. Like North Melbourne, West Coast, Richmond, the teams that have been sitting at the bottom
Yeah.
two for a long time. Richmond only recently. They're already in a really steady incline of improvement. Richmond may be a little bit more ahead in terms of quicker
I
development
think,
thanks
yeah.
to the very fast rebuild through the draft. But they're
Yeah.
all heading in the right direction, and it's really good to see, not just in terms of individual, like per team sort of stuff, but in terms of the AFL as a whole. This is good.
Yeah, exactly. Like as I said, it looked like it was just going to be easy beat Eagles for all 24 rounds of this season, but they've really actually roused up a bit, which
Yeah,
is really good.
they have. It's really, really good for them. Jumping over to the individuals, Jeremy Cameron, as we have already mentioned, he came alive in the fourth quarter despite being kind of held really well, as you had mentioned in the first three quarters. He kicked 5-2 overall from 14 disposals, 10 effective, equating to 71.4% efficiency. 5 contested possessions, 7 marks with 4 of them inside 50, 4 inside 50s overall, and 10 score involvements. Tom Atkins was solid with pressure, as per usual, finishing with 15 touches, 8 contested possessions, 6 marks, 3 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 10 tackles with 4 of them inside 50, and 33 pressure acts. The Max Holmes was prolific with transition and ball movement, collecting 27 disposals, 8 contested possessions, 7 marks, 8 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 2 behinds, 7 score involvements, 15 pressure acts, and 853 meters gained. For the Eagles, Matt Flynn won out against Free Stanley, which is a huge plus on Flynn's part. He got 31 hitouts with 8-2 advantage, 15 touches, 8 contested possessions, 5 marks, 3 clearances, 4 score involvements, and 4 1%ers. And then co-captain Oscar Allen, as you had mentioned, stepped up in Jake Waterman's absence. He kicked 4 goals from 8 disposals, 7 of them effective, equating to 87.5% efficiency, 3 marks with 2 of them inside 50, and 6 score involvements. Touching briefly on injuries, Liam Ryan was subbed out with a corked thigh. I assume it's hopefully minor. I'll find out when the injury lists are updated. Hopefully it's positive signs.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Right. Now, just a little fun fact for you, because I was a bit surprised when I saw this. We're, we'll put we'll put over 6 games played. Like, okay, the top person is Marcus Bontempelli. He's not playing at the moment. But who do you think the next best midfielder is to get involved in score launches? That is first possession starting a chain that results in a goal.
I feel like we should mentioning this at the bottom 4 team.
No, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's
Okay,
related to this game.
it is related. So it's a Geelong player. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh oh, you put me on the spot. Is it a player that we've talked about already?
Yes, it's the player we talked about already.
It's a player we've talked about in this game?
Yes.
Is it Max Holmes?
No.
Grime Myers?
No. You've talked about him not too long ago.
Oh, is he in my list?
Yeah.
Is it Tom
It's
Atkins?
Tommy Atkins. Tom Atkins.
That's
He has had a very underrated year this year. Leading the tackles and still getting involved offensively. And yeah, I don't think he'll even get a conversation in the All Australian, but it's not
I don't
that
know.
far off.
He's playing off of half back, right?
No,
No,
Tom Atkins inside midfield.
Oh, okay. Yeah, actually, that is a much harder position to kind of put yourself into.
Yeah.
Um,
So,
he's definitely up there. Like 100%, he should be in conversation. But I mean, when you're
but
looking,
he's not going to.
yeah, when
You
you're
know what
looking
I
at your
mean?
Cripps, your Bontempellis, your Merritts,
Yeah.
it's really hard to break into that inside midfield
But
position.
it's just insane. Like, as I said, pretty much shared the same amount of score launches and still a very solid amount of score involved. It's not just, a byproduct. He still averages, I think it's like 6 or 7 score involvements per game. But you know what I mean? When you got a Bailey Smith that's just your meters gained, having that hard nut, just starting everything, is really underrated. And it's, again, why people tend to underrate Geelong's midfield and how it just keeps on getting it done. Because it's the hard, gritty players like Tom Atkins.
Yeah.
And finally, just to, finish it all, because it's not that much I want to talk about this game as well. It was good to see Mitch Duncan back.
Yes, that's right.
Had a fairly solid game.
I forgot that he's been out with long term injury. It's good that he's
Yeah.
back on the park.
Yeah, as I said, just sort of serviceable. Few decent halfback possessions, but yeah, didn't really have too many turnovers. Got involved in a bit of play. Really good.
Yeah,
I think it was
good.
like 25 disposals or something. 19.
Yeah, it was under 20.
19 disposals, 7 marks.
Still solid.
5 tackles. Yeah, exactly. So good on him.
Yeah, 100%. All right, let's jump over to the mid-season draft. Before we touch on the games ahead, reminder that there will be 8 games this week, as only 2 teams have the bye. We're going to touch on the mid-season draft and maybe briefly theorize if some of these players could actually play this week. We don't know where their current positionings are in terms of like integration into the team, but it's fun to theorize. So, I believe there were a fair amount of players drafted. I think it's like 15 or something like that.
18.
18, thank you. I knew it was a big number. So we'll start from the top and just kind of work our way down, starting with Tom McCarthy, as I had briefly mentioned before, who was picked up by West Coast, the defensive midfielder. Plays predominantly halfback sort of position. And he was drafted from the Richmond VFL team. He's very solid. I've watched a couple of his games from the VFL side. He is really, really solid. And he's going to be massively utilized, like, pretty much instantly.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, you might be able to say, like, his distribution, is that a big part of this game? Because if he can, I think they'll actually put him into a more distributive halfback role.
Yes, he normally has a distribution sort of role. I think he can also play a lockdown defensive role.
Okay.
But I believe he's predominantly been like transition, ball movement sort of stuff.
I think that'll be good because it's like, you want to be defensively solid, but if he can mix up, because as I said, Tom Cole, not the worst distributor, but, a bit whatever. And then as I said, Duggan's just a bit of a double-edged sword these days. So
Yeah.
if you can, maybe give Tom McCarthy 15 possessions and maybe 10 kicks, you might see a bit less turnovers coming from the halfback, we hope.
Yeah, I think there's a possible chance. Next on the list is Zach Bench, who was picked up by North Melbourne and comes from Werribee. He's a forward. I don't know too much about the rest of the players on this list, I will be honest with you. But I think North Melbourne definitely needed another forward up there to support Larky, and
Yeah,
hopefully it's a
really.
good sign.
Yeah, exactly. Puts less pressure on Darling having to play all the games, as well as not needing to put either. I forgot. I think they have Jack Whitlock, either
They've
as
got
a
one of the
12
Whitlocks, yeah.
yeah. So, yeah. Talking about Sol, Harrison Ram, Port Adelaide, from the Sandfell, much needed. I think he's a player that you might see being played early. I've heard that he is a pretty solid, tall defender. Yeah, as I said, just anything, even if it's like mid-size, we just need so much off halfback because, as I said, we've been leaking partially like West Coast from distribution, but also just not having the defensive accountability. So anything will be good for the Port
Yeah,
backline.
absolutely. Next on the list is Flynn Young from picked up by Carlton, who is a forward and also comes from Werribee. They'll definitely utilize him very much because their forward line has been a little mismatched as of recent. Well, mostly
Mm,
mostly on ground. Like obviously in the air they've got Mackay and Kerner who are normally pretty fine,
yeah.
but yeah, they definitely need some help on ground level, and I think Flynn can definitely help them out in that regard.
Also, I am noticing a lot of these names are just borrowed from other footballers.
This is true.
Like you got Oscar Adams, Archer May, Tom McCarthy, Flynn Young, Michael Selwood coming up.
This is
Get
true.
your own names.
Although
What are you doing?
this Michael Selwood has two L's instead of one L, like
Yeah,
the
true.
famous Selwood family. But he
Yeah.
goes to the Bulldogs. He's a defensive player out from the Waffle.
Yeah, this was a bit of a surprising, but he has been really good. I think he was almost in Sandover conversations.
Oh yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's a distributive halfback. Um, and yeah, just been playing pretty well. I think Peel's been okay this season, near the top, so not too much surprise that he's been pinched up, even though he wasn't really on the draft radar initially. I'm pretty sure this was like his first real serious look at going to an AFL club.
oh there you go. Next on the list is Archer May, who's a forward. I think he's a small forward. For actually might be a tall forward. I don't entirely know. But
Oh,
they're
it would
off.
have to be tall with
I
Essendon's
I would
injuries.
assume due to Essendon's injuries, they're a tall forward. But yeah, they're
Yeah.
going to Essendon, and they also come from the Waffle, but from Subiaco.
Yeah, so I've got Rookie Me up, and yeah, he is a tall player. Um, he has 12 goals in the 6 league seasons this game. So he unfortunately, that's right. Oh wait. Oh, the Black Swans. Okay, that's the what do you call it? The Waffle representative side.
Oh, yeah,
Um, the state. Um, but yeah, as I said, so yeah, you're looking just for your standard stock key player. Apparently a decent set shot, so yeah,
definitely needed.
makes sense. Yeah, exactly.
Next on the list is Oscar Adams, a defensive player from Glenelg, the Sandful, going up to the Gold Coast Suns.
Yeah. Do you want to just like lightly go through these because there's a lot here that I don't think we're gonna
Yeah,
really
I'm just
mention,
happy to
but
just name them off. Next on the list is Roan
yeah.
Steele, which is a really interesting name, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah.
You can kind of connect him with side bottom to go Roan Steel side bottom. Has a great name.
And you can connect him to Chapel Roan as well.
Yeah, you
Maybe got
could.
a good set of pipes. Who knows?
But again, they're also off to Collingwood. They're a midfield player from West Perth out in the Waffle. Jacob Newton is next on the list. He's from Norwood in the Sandful. He's a forward player going to West Coast. Cooper Trembar, I believe that's how it's pronounced. We'll find out anyway. He's going to North Melbourne. A defensive player comes from the North Melbourne VFL team. Ewan McKinley, I believe, or McKinlay, maybe, from North Adelaide in the Waffle, going to Port Adelaide. So thankfully, gets to play for a home team. Zach Walker from the Gippsland Power out in the VFL, defensive player, and is being picked up by the Bulldogs. Lachlan Blackiston, or Blakiston, is from East Fremantle out in the Waffle. Do you know a little bit about this one?
No, but I'm pretty sure Goldstein will be very happy about this.
Oh yeah,
He
100%.
won't have to play full
because they're a
games.
ruck
No.
player and they're going to the Bombers.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know too much about him. Again, that's one that I'll annoy a Waffle Club. Up and coming ruckman. You put a bit of time into it, all of a sudden you're gone.
Yeah,
So-
that's unfortunately true.
Hey,
But
today actually.
Oh, actually,
WA
probably-
Day, they've got the
fortunately true.
they've got the derbies on today. So it's East Fremantle versus West Fremantle. South Fremantle, I should say.
Oh yeah,
And East Perth versus South Perth.
oh yeah, fair enough. Next on
Oh,
the
West
list-
Perth. Oh, directions confusing.
Okay, sure. I mean, you're out in the west. Surely that's helpful enough.
Where? Yeah, everything's west here.
But next on the list is Caleb Lewis, who's going up to the Gold Coast Suns. He's a forward and was playing for the KC Demons here in the VFL, formerly my local VFL team technically, because I used to live out in that way. I think Sandringham is my current local team in terms of like VFL teams. But next on the list is Noah Howes, going to Collingwood from South Adelaide in the Sandful. He's a forward player. Manny Liddy from the Central Districts is going to Port Adelaide as a midfielder. Oscar Smart with a K and two T's was playing for the Essendon VFL team, picked up by Essendon. They're a forward player. I think they're also a tall forward, so that'll be a big plus for them. And then last on the list is Liam McMahon, who is going to Essendon. They're a forward player, and they were previously playing for Carlton.
Right. Did you say your current team was? It wasn't Williamstown, was it?
No, Williamstown is out in the western suburbs. That is not me.
Okay.
No, I think Sandringham Dragons. I think are my local team based on where I live now.
Yeah.
My former local team would be the
That's
KC
alright.
Demons, because that's where my hometown is, out that way.
Mm.
But obviously, you know, Richmond born and bred. If I get to a Richmond VFL game, I will.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a bit the same. I'm Swan Districts because I'm was in the eastern suburbs of Perth, but they're a very blue collar team.
Oh yeah,
They're a bit rough around the edges.
that's very
Also,
valid.
than I think I am, to be fair. But yeah. I was just thinking because I thought it might have been the team because I saw it on Reddit. A lower scoring win. The 2-1-13 win to Williamstown it was against the Western Bulldogs, who scored 1 goal.
Yeah. I
That
did
was
spot
a
that. To be
very
fair,
interesting.
Williamstown Oval is known for being extremely windy because it's by the coast. So there's always some horrible games out there. So you kind of discount them half the time because it's always a wind factor.
Yeah, I get you.
All right, now that that's done, we will jump over to our fixture for the games ahead. Starting with the Bulldogs and the Hawks at Marvel Stadium Thursday night.
Yeah, well, honestly, again, when are Hawthorn going to bounce back? Because 3 losses in a row, 4th puts him in really dangerous territory. Like, this is almost to the point where they're sort of fallen back into the pack of teams that are struggling to make the 8 at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, if the Bulldogs win, who are currently outside the 8, they'll be the same amount of wins as Hawthorn with better percentage.
Mm.
So very important game for Hawthorn. But we've
But
talked about turnovers. We've talked about back half turnovers. One team who you cannot give back half turnovers to is the Western Bulldogs. One team where you cannot let the midfield dominate
absolutely.
is the Western Bulldogs. And it's a tough matchup. We're seeing the Bulldogs be a bit flaky at times, more last year. Actually, no, they've been really consistent this year. I'll take that back. But I don't know. There's been a few games where I thought they'll do a bit better, which they haven't. But I reckon this is the game where they stamp their authority and get that big scalp to really put them in the 8 contention.
Yeah, I think so. I think this, well, considering the Dogs are coming off of the bye, they should have a much stronger I want to say deposition, but I feel like that's not the right word. I have a
Deposition.
stronger hand.
Disposition.
Yeah, probably disposition is probably better. Either way, they have a stronger hand to play in this game. Like the Hawks want to bounce back, but after they've played some really tough games over the past couple of weeks as well, so they've surely got to be tired and sore. Whilst whilst a lot of teams are also known to not really have great wins coming off of a bye, like this has been a historical thing. I think the Dogs are going to be perfectly fine, and I think they're just going to jump them hard and pretty much just win it fairly convincingly, because the Dogs, going off of their track record over the past month, they're so good. They're insane.
Yeah. And it should be noted that this is the first. No, this can't be right.
What'd you find?
It says that they played in round 1, but that's February. They must have put the preseason in this.
Yeah, that would be a preseason game.
I hate when they do that. So yeah, the last 2 matches Hawthorn's won. Because like there are a few double headers being played. I think one of them resolves in a couple of weeks, but I was like, it's way too early.
Yeah,
Way
I
too
think the
early
double
to finish
headers
a double header.
are coming up pretty soon. I think it's usually like
Yeah.
middle of the buys into going into post buy.
Yeah, some of them get early, but yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway. Yeah, Western Bulldogs.
Yeah.
For Hawthorn, they need to get a bit more consistency from the midfield. And yeah, attack the outsides as well, because that is where they probably have the advantage over the Bulldogs.
Yeah.
Try and expose their defense
I
that way. And maybe they might find something, but yeah, I'm with you. I'm favoring the
completely
Bulldogs.
agree. All right, on to probably one of the 2 match of the rounds. Friday night game at the Adelaide Oval with the Crows hosting the Lions.
Yeah. So again, another one where in recent history it's been fairly close. Adelaide only just falling short last year and drawing the time before that. And yeah, it's like it's very weird because both teams are sort of attacking from turnovers, but in very different ways. Adelaide going more from the halfback to forward line, whereas Brisbane trying for those earlier turnovers. So I think the calculated back half movement from Adelaide might advantage them here. You know, as long as their midfield holds up reasonably well, which isn't a guarantee, I think they'll be more likely to win. But yeah, as I said, it should be a fairly close contest. And again, it's one of those things where you don't want to like discredit the 2 Lions too much because they're not winning convincingly. But they're still last year's premiers. They're still playing a solid enough brand of football.
Yeah, agree.
And they have got to make sure. And this is actually a team that can sort of do it, where a lot of their inside players can play outside as well. But that's actually where you could have some Hugh McCluggage, and that would be like your Peatling or your Isaac Cumming sort of player.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this, like, the Lions are built to where they could capitalize on like the brief issues Adelaide have defensive wise. But on the flip side, Adelaide have been playing a really, really solid brand of football recently, and if they're able to get their offense going, they could easily jump the Lions. and well, I won't say. Well, I say easily jump the lines. I don't mean it's going to be like a blowout of a game. I think it's going to be close and intense. But
Mm.
they could very much capitalize very easily on um, turnovers, um, forward half possessions into inside 50, of course, and hopefully convincing goals. Their three-pronged tall line should hopefully come into really good effect here. It's definitely going to stretch Harris Andrews into what he can do.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and it'll just be about having Leicester, having Jack Payne, having
Mm.
Zorko try to control Keane and not Keane, Keys and Rochelle at ground level.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where, again, it's a nice matchup because I don't think they will, but I think Adelaide will be sort of hoping that they actually put him on Thilthorpe instead of Fogarty. Harris Andrews, I should be
Yes, no,
specific,
I knew.
because I think that's one of the ones where I think because Thilthorpe has such good hands, you can actually kick it directly to a Thilthorpe Andrews contest and be pretty confident. Because Harris Andrews is a good spoiler. He likes the intercept marks, but he can still defend one on one. But that's one where it's like, you put that on, and then, as I said, in the rare chance that it does come to ground, or you target some of your wider leads, being probably going to be the Fogarty leading out ride, or Tex will just be floating if he plays.
Yeah,
Should do. Uh, yeah, as I
yeah, he
said,
should
and
with it
that's
being a
where,
home game.
as I said, yeah, as long as you can prevent the intercepts, force Brisbane to spoil, I think both teams will be looking for that, though. They want the ball to ground in their forward half.
Yeah, 100%. This is going to be a close game. It's going to be an intense game. But I'm leaning towards the Crows on this one, I think.
Yeah.
All right, jumping over to our Saturday games where Richmond hosts the Swans at the MCG. I should be at this one. I should be boots on ground. But what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Richmond very good against the Swans. How could a tiger possibly lose to a swan? They are so edible and delectable right
I
now.
I wish this was the simplest answer. I really do. But well, honestly, based on form, it could be.
Well, it's like, it's like, oh, Richmond find it hard to score. And here's like a team that gives up so many points in the forward half just because their turnover is so terrible. They can get the ball in the forward half because their midfield's going all right. It'll just be their, if they remain disciplined, again, prevent Sydney's for midfield from coming up. And they will get a few players back. I think Mills is only 1 game suspension. They might have a few more others coming in, but man, I'd be tempted to tip him. I don't know if I will. It's very reactionary, but man, it's, you know, yeah, like Sydney's defense not even that good.
I
Um,
just brought up their injury list now, just to double check. This hasn't been updated yet. This
yeah,
is still from last week. But Harry Cunningham test, Riak Andrew 1 to 2 weeks, Robbie Fox test, Aaron Francis test, and Sam Wicks 1 to 2 weeks. I can't remember who played in the game just gone, but they should have a couple of players back that may have come of use.
yeah,
It could make an impact on this game, but it's all up in the air still as to whether it will.
yeah, exactly. But I don't know. It's just, again, it's so hard because, obviously Richmond, they have to put in a lot of effort, but this one is definitely a game that's targetable for a win. Honestly, in terms of like players playing to their standard, like Richmond have more players that are playing at a higher level than the
Mm.
Swans are. It's just, again, the Swans could easily just get bailed out by Isaac Heaney. Like that could just happen,
It genuinely could just happen. He could just have one hell of a game, which he often does.
Yeah, so
Uh,
I don't
I'm
know. I
I'm
want to take Richmond.
I'm putting trust in my boys this week, just
Yeah,
because we do have a really solid history against the Swans, especially on the G. Um,
yeah, love to see it.
but we'll see. It's a 120 game, so it's fairly early on a Saturday. Um, it's kind of one of those like dead zone kind of games where the 120 time slot isn't always the greatest. but
Yeah.
we take what
No,
we
I
can
get
get.
you.
All right,
Oh, man.
jumping down the highway. If you've got nothing else to say.
Yeah. No, it's good.
All right, then let's go down the highway, down the Hume. I think it's the Hume. I can't remember, or maybe it's the Western Ring Road. I can't remember. It's one of those roads out west in Melbourne. Down to Geelong,
Mm.
where the Cats we will host the Suns.
And this is the probably one of the last hard-ish games for a while against the Suns, but still at Goomba. They're playing a lot of the back half at Goomba Stadium. And if Geelong can get a win here, they set themselves up to challenge for the top spot. I know they're a bit behind now, but looking at their run home,
Their run home is
this is a
very
very important
soft.
game for them. Yeah, as I said, we talked about it a bit before. It's one of those things where Geelong have definitely benefit from GWS looking mediocre and Port looking like absolute trash.
And the Swans just not being good at all.
Oh yeah, and the Swans as well. So yeah, so no, they have a double header against Brisbane.
Oh yeah, that'll be
They've
another
just
tough
been
game. But besides that,
yeah. Yeah, so as I said, so it's all sort of coming up Millhouse. Yeah, and as I said, already had a tough start of the season. If they can get this game, that'll be very good. At ground level, is where you can sort of expose the Suns a bit, only by a bit, and Geelong can do that. So it will really be who can get their ball in their forward line enough.
mm-hmm.
Because the Suns will get it in their forward line and they will score. Geelong haven't been defensively accountable this year. They haven't really needed to. So they will turn this game into a shootout. So it's just one of those things where they might have to be a bit more consistent than they were against the West Coast Eagles. But again, if, Bailey Smith has a good match, they at least not put a hard tag, but, you probably put Oish Mullen on a sort of player that you might want to limit, whether that's Noah Anderson
Yep.
or someone else, whoever that may be. Or even if you put him as a halfbacker to try and put him on Took Miller even, that could be an option. He has played halfback before, so, you can try and curb his influence, which is probably the first time that's done this year. So, yeah. But obviously for the Suns, it's about territory.
Yeah,
If they actually... Well, they will win the territory anyway, I think. But if they can get 10 more inside 50s, I reckon, they'll probably win. But Geelong, as I said, otherwise probably should convert more from their actual entries.
yeah.
That's where I stake the game out. It'll be very high scoring. You know what? I don't know if this is a bold one, but we'll go a bit of the opposite last week. Combined total combined total score 200 plus. I'm putting it in.
If it's a dry game, 100% possible, 100%. If it's a wet weather game, you're gonna be way off.
I was at the Whims last week and it favoured me. How could the weather disappoint me 2 weeks and how could it not back me in 2 weeks in a row?
True. I would love to see the Suns get an upset here because Geelong are 100% heavily favoured. I think I'm probably going to tip Geelong anyway. One home ground advantage, and I think just overall they have a kind of a better structure in terms of the Suns just in terms of one-on-one matchups.
Yeah.
But I would love to see the Suns genuinely take a win in the Gary Ablett Cup.
Yeah. Oh, look, as I said, I reckon it's it's somewhere between 55 and 60% win chance for Geelong. I'm still very respecting the Suns, even for their light blip last week. The weekend. So
yeah,
as I said, it was just it's not that I think Gold Coast aren't up to the task, and they will be with them in this shootout. It's just Geelong. It's more of a probably more opportunities converted.
Yeah, I think so.
But if they miss, that's when Geelong will probably put the foot on the throat, or Gold Coast, I should say.
Yes.
So they'll still need to be accurate, and of course, they still need to get not dominated in that midfield. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. All right, flying up to Canberra, where the Giants host Port Adelaide.
Yeah. This game won't be good.
No, I don't think so.
Last year it was one of the worst matches ups, and they're in the top four. Now they're both sort of playing like bottom four teams. GWS have only really been that for the last few weeks. They've been a bit off, but Port Adelaide have been a bit more consistent in being absolute crap. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? It's going to be hard because we'll need to see what team Port Adelaide puts out. Um, Again, like we mentioned, Richmond try to make the most of their entries to prevent GWS transitioning the other way. And it's actually similar to the way that Port go into it. They already target very, very wide. So it'll be the stoppages. If Port can get a hold of the stoppages, I think that they'll be able to at least get half a chance in like a scrappy ass game.
Yeah.
The Giants, though, if Port turn the ball over, the Giants will rebound hard. They'll just win purely off points off turnover, like most Port games. It's really just about control, really. If Port can be at least a bit disciplined, I think they'll take a grindhouse game. That's when they might eke a win. Otherwise, I don't really see them winning by playing too aggressively because they'll just shoot themselves in their own foot, assuming that there isn't like a huge number of players back. I think Lukosius might be nearing a return. There's another few players that might be. Burton, I think. Oh, I can't remember. Anyway,
That's all right.
that's what I think. I mean, I reckon it's the Giants 65%, but again, there's a few match types where I think Port might be in with half a chance.
Yeah.
It's closer than the ladder indicates,
Oh,
but
that's for
only
sure.
because GWS are a bit crap.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I don't think I really need to say my part in that regard. I think you summarized it all pretty well. But I'm going the Giants on this one. It's kind of a no-brainer. Let's be honest with you.
Are we tipping Port and letting everyone else in our tipping competition get a better tip?
Well, good luck with that. Because next
Yeah.
up on our Sunday games, we have the Spoon Bowl, where we're heading over to one of North
Ooh.
Melbourne's first bought matches in Bunbury, where they
Mm.
host the Eagles this week.
Bringing the hands to the Spoon Bowl. Honestly, if there's not a fist fight, I'm not encouraging a fist fight. But if a player happens to be listening to this podcast, I hope they find the concept of bringing fist to hands oval. Might encourage something. Disclaimer again, still joking. Honestly, how do you decide this game?
I
Again, North Melbourne coming off a bye.
I genuinely
Who
don't
knows how
know.
they come up from it? It's like, honestly, the forward half game for North might be a bit, but again, West Coast defense hasn't been putrid. And I think this is the test to see if it actually has some stability that they can get for 4 quarters against a more evenly matched up team. Like, they might struggle a bit with Larky, but I think height wise, they had the matchup for him, whether it's Edwards, whether it's Gibney. And then, you just gotta limit Darling's influence. Uh, and then, as I said, it's about stopping things on ground level, which,
Yeah.
that'll be North Melbourne's Avenue 2 shots, forward half ground level. If they get a few set play shots, that will be enough to get, around 100 points. But defensively, the Eagles do have some avenues. We've seen them score fairly efficiently this year. So against North, that shouldn't be a problem. So and that North,
Oh.
they win clearances, but they don't defend them very well. If they can turn any of the center wins into direct inside 50s,
Mm-hmm.
that's when they have a chance. And I'm not sure who's winning this. I'm probably still favoring North, but man, it's a real up in the air sort of game.
Yeah, 100%. Like I want to put some faith into the Eagles in that they kind of carry out like the solid bit of form that they have been playing with in the past couple of weeks into this game. But there's a little bit of lopsided matchups with North that might play a little bit more into North's favor. It's definitely going to be a test
Yeah.
because it's an unfamiliar location as well to everyone for that fact. Um,
Yeah.
so it's going to be a real test to see. Oh wait, no, hang on, didn't they
Well, they did play
play?
the preseason
Yeah, I
game.
was going to
Yeah,
say
they did
they
play the
played the
preseason
preseason match against
and
Richmond out there.
it
So
it was
West Coast have a little bit of experience, but I
yeah.
don't know how much it's going to play into their favor. I want to I'd love to see them actually winning against North. Granted,
Yeah.
as much as I've been a much more bigger fan of North, pretty much all of this season, it'd be good to see the Eagles get another win on the board. Um,
Yeah.
but I just
Well,
I don't know how to really pick this.
if it is windy and it's shaping to be clearing up, it's semi-storming here at the moment. But that should clear up by the weekend. So anyone going to Bunbury, it should be all right. But again, 19 and a bit windy. It won't feel that dissimilar to Hobart. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah, dimensions might be a bit different. I don't know too much about that, but I think North can handle that aspect of it. Yeah, as I said, it's just more, who can get the most out of their defense, to just generate. And as that, I think both teams will generate enough inside 50s. I think West Coast with more inside 50s. It'll just be interesting to see if that converts into a very competitive score.
yeah,
That can actually win.
yeah, 100%. All right, jumping over to the MCG where Carlton host Essendon in a very interesting matchup because both teams
Mm,
currently weirdly positioned, both in form and in kind of structure for that fact. Obviously, Essendon with a ton of
mm.
their injuries don't really have the tall stocks to kind of match up on much. Carlton are kind of struggling a little bit with midfield presence. There's a couple of link ups and transition players that they're missing that really, really would help them right now. But they've still got really strong pressure around the ball. Essendon have picked up their pressure around the ball. So I think it's going to be about who is able to get into their forward 50 first.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think also a tiny bit of conversion plays into a factor.
Oh, 100%.
It'll be set shots versus ground level shots. Whoever scores the most in either of those categories. I think I reckon. Oh, what are we gonna go? You know what? Maybe this is a wild prediction. I'll get 2-for-1 deal.
Yeah,
Two for
go on.
one deal. I think 80% of the scoring shots will be Carlton's set shots and Essendon's general play shots. That's I have to do math, and I probably
I'm gonna
won't,
trust you to do the math on that one.
but that's 2-for-1. 2-for-1. It's by round, the contact's a bit licking, and bam, we've got some. So yeah, again, in this matchup, I really don't know. Anything can happen. There will be a lot, I reckon,
Yeah,
in the team sheets.
yeah, I think
This
so.
is where you could see a few debuts of players with a week under their belt, maybe a training session. But yeah, as I said, Essendon, yeah, like Ben Mackay, if he plays solid enough on Kerno, maybe, as I said, prevent enough set shots. I actually like them a bit for it, but
You sure we're not gonna get the
Carlton,
brotherly matchup?
Carlton, it could happen. It could happen. Um, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I forgot who's tall in Essendon's defense apart from Mackay. I'm not sure if they're like there or I'm forgetting. But anyway, so I mean, Carl, I don't know. I'll decide this on the day. I can't tell you.
I think I think just because the way Essendon has been playing recently, I think they could have like the matchup against Carlton, especially with Carlton
Yeah,
coming off of a bye. And again, track record says that Carlton are not very good off of a bye. Um,
yeah.
so I kind of want to put some faith into the Bombers here. But again, this is going to be
Uh,
one of those matches that you
the
just can't really pick.
yeah, the Bombers could easily just as much hit the wall
Oh no,
too. So
100%. They're still struggling to run out games completely. Um,
yeah, there's gonna be
they've
like an
got the injury
inherent.
fronts.
Yeah, there's going to just be an inherent variability to Essendon for the next few weeks.
Yeah,
And they'll just have to accept a poor performance every now and then just due to personnel. I don't know
yeah,
if it'll be this week, but it could be.
that's pretty much just how it is. Um,
Yeah.
Jumping over to the MCG once again, though, for the traditional Monday King's Birthday clash, big freeze between Melbourne and Collingwood.
Yeah, and it's hard because obviously Collingwood should be very heavy favourites in this game. We've seen a few times Melbourne's been able to pull an upset against a better Collingwood in this matchup, but yeah, honestly, we've talked about how much Collingwood like to come off turnovers. This match, they'll probably have to get it more in their back half than their forward half. I think Melbourne actually have the ability to control it a bit from their back half, which lower a bit of potential, but as I said, you're probably just looking at more from the back half than the forward half for Collingwood.
Yeah.
They'll be looking to work it from a bit further back, but still supply enough inside 50. This should be a comfortable Collingwood win. Melbourne's midfield, if they sort of pick up a bit, they might at least get a bit more on their terms. But Collingwood will definitely pressure him. And if it's scrap kicks inside 50, we've already seen Melbourne struggle with conversion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't see them with insane midfield pressure as well. Getting enough quality inside 50s, even though the inside 50 count could be fairly close in this game. I don't think territory is a problem for Melbourne. It's more quality movement.
Yeah, it's more quality inside 50s and conversion, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree that it should be a convincing Collingwood win. It'd be really uncharacteristic of them to cough up an upset. But again, as you have also said, Melbourne could do it. They have a history of doing it to Collingwood, so it's possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's going to happen this year.
Yeah, is this the widest gap in between two teams? It probably... Yeah, I'd say this is actually the most
In terms of
blowout.
this week at least.
Lopsided.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Last week was very lopsided. There's a lot of close matches on paper this week, which probably means that we'll get like the couple of blowout expected games will be very, very close.
Yeah,
one-sided.
It usually goes that way. And then just as a note, St Kilda and Fremantle have the bye for this week. And that and that brings us.
Yep. No, that was a finish up. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. No, I thought so. I was sorry. I muted my mic to transition screens just to save on editing. That brings us, as I stretch, to the end of episode 61. Thank you all so much for coming to hang out, coming to chat, coming to listen, coming to like and subscribe. Of course, always leave us some feedback if there's anything specific you want us to touch on. The bye rounds are a blessing and a curse sometimes, because sometimes it means we have more stuff to talk about, and we can't always get, an early episode out or a shorter episode out, I should say. But that's okay. It happens. I should hopefully be at the Saturday game against the Swans. I'm looking forward to that. I should also be doing some streaming and some other project stuff throughout the week, so please go check out my socials down below or on screen right here, of course, if you want to go check them out. Podcast socials and all that, always where they usually find them. Episodes again, always out now at 1 p.m. AEST, 11 a.m. WA time, 3 p.m. New Zealand time for any New Zealanders out there. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing how these bye rounds relate to how teams shape up for the rest of the season, because it's always hit and miss with the byes. So it's always hard.
I had a good time not worrying about Port for a week.
Yeah, I can imagine. Considering you're joining us at the bottom 4, I can imagine that well.
Yeah.
I've accepted my fate this season.
Yeah.
But yes, thank you all. Thank you all so much. We'll look forward to seeing you all next week. Hope you all have a great week. Of course, with these releases on Wednesday, I hope you've had a good Monday, Tuesday up to this point. And we will see you all next week for episode 62. So until then, take care.